3 days after I buried my husband, the landlord of the house Marcus had been renting called me with words that turned my blood cold. His voice was nervous, almost afraid, like a man who had seen something he wished he could unsee. He said his name was Edward Collins, and that he had found something I needed to see. Something urgent. Something that could not wait. Then came the sentence that made my heart stop beating for a full 3 seconds. "Do not tell your sister," he said. "Do not tell her fiancé. You have to see this alone. I did not ask why." Something in his tone told me this was not a request. I grabbed my car keys with trembling hands and drove toward downtown Ashford, Connecticut, my pulse pounding the entire way. When I opened that office door 20 minutes later, what I saw made me grab the doorframe to keep from collapsing. But before I tell you what was behind that door, I need to take you back to the funeral, because that is where this nightmare truly began. I am truly grateful you are still here with me. Before we continue, take a moment to leave a comment and tell me where you are watching from and what time it is where you are right now. It means more than you know, and I read every single one. Also, please note this story includes some fictional elements added for entertainment and educational purposes. Any resemblance to real names or settings is purely coincidental, but the message I am sharing with you is meaningful and worth hearing. The funeral was 3 days ago, but it felt like 3 years had passed since I stood at that graveside and watched them lower my husband into the frozen ground. Marcus McCall, 38 years old, killed in a car accident on Miller's Curve. That is what the police report said. Sharp curve, wet road, no signs of foul play, case closed. A tragedy, nothing more. I was 36 years old and suddenly a widow. The word tasted like ash in my mouth every time I tried to say it. Widow. Such a small word for such an enormous emptiness. The service was held at Ashford Community Church on a gray October morning. The sky hung low and heavy, threatening rain that never came. Leaves fell from the maples lining the cemetery path, drifting down like grief made visible. I stood at the graveside surrounded by people I barely recognized, listening to a pastor I had never met read words about eternal rest and God's mysterious plan. I wanted to scream at him that there was nothing mysterious about a man dying at 38. There was only cruelty and randomness, and the terrible silence of a house that would never hear his voice again. But something else nagged at me that day. Something I could not name. My sister Jenna and her fiancé Tyler arrived 15 minutes after the service started. I saw them hurrying across the cemetery parking lot, Jenna's heels sinking into the soft earth, Tyler gripping her elbow like he was holding her upright. They slipped into the back row just as I began my eulogy. I looked out at the gathered mourners and caught Jenna's eye. She looked away immediately, dabbing at dry eyes with a tissue. Tyler stood rigid beside her, his jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle working even from 20 feet away. He did not cry, did not even seem to be listening, just stared at the casket with an expression I could not quite read. During the reception afterward, they left within 40 minutes. Tyler practically dragged Jenna toward the door, muttering something about her needing to rest. I wanted to call out, to ask them to stay, to beg my sister to sit with me and hold my hand the way she used to when we were children, but they were gone before I could finish my second cup of coffee. And just before they walked out, I saw Tyler lean close to Jenna and whisper something. Whatever he said made her face go pale as milk. I dismissed it at the time. Grief makes people act strange. I told myself that over and over during the 3 days that followed. Grief makes people act strange. But now, sitting alone in my silent house with Edward Collins's words echoing in my skull, those moments replayed like a warning I should have heeded. The house felt wrong without Marcus. Our home of 8 years had become a museum of absence. His coffee mug still sat in the sink where he had left it the morning of the accident. His reading glasses waited on the nightstand, patient as ever. His winter coat hung by the front door, still carrying the faint scent of his cologne, cedar and sandalwood. Every time I walked past it, my chest seized up like a fist had closed around my heart. I had not been able to enter his home office yet, the room where he spent so many late nights working on accounts, staring at his computer screen with that little furrow between his eyebrows that I always found endearing. Our marriage was not perfect. No marriage is. But it was good. I thought it was good. Yet, in those final weeks, Marcus had been distracted, working late more often than usual, taking phone calls in the other room and speaking in low tones I could not quite hear. I assumed it was stress from a difficult client. I never thought to ask deeper questions. 3 days ago, while sorting through his personal effects returned from the accident scene, I found something in his wallet that gave me pause. A business card, slightly crumpled, wedged behind his driver's license. Edward Collins, Property Management, Collins Building, with a downtown Ashford address I did not recognize. Marcus had never mentioned renting another property. We shared everything, or so I believed. Why would he have a landlord I had never heard of? I meant to ask someone about it. But grief swallowed me whole, and the card sat on my kitchen counter like an unanswered question. Until this morning, when that same Edward Collins called me with a voice full of fear. Let me tell you about that phone call because the details matter. The phone rang at 9:17 in the morning. I almost let it go to voicemail. I was not ready to hear another neighbor tell me how sorry they were, how Marcus was in a better place now, as if anyone knew where that better place was supposed to be. But old habits die hard, so I picked up. "Mrs. McCall," the voice said. It was familiar but formal. "My name is Edward Collins. I'm the landlord of a property your husband was renting. I am sorry to bother you during such a difficult time." I almost hung up. Another sympathy call, I thought. Another stranger offering condolences that would change nothing. But then Edward said something that made me grip the phone until my knuckles turned white. "Your husband left something with me," he said. "Something he told me you needed to see if anything ever happened to him." My blood ran cold. If anything happened to him. "What do you mean by that? I cannot explain over the phone, Mrs. McCall. Someone might be listening." His voice dropped to a whisper, and I could hear real fear in it. "I need you to understand something. What I am about to show you, your life might depend on it." "You are scaring me," I said. "What is this about?" "Come to my office. The Collins Building, 2nd floor. And Mrs. McCall," he paused, and I heard him take a shaky breath. "Do not tell your sister. Do not tell her fiancé Tyler. Do not tell anyone. Just come. Now." The line went dead. I sat there holding the phone, heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to break free. This could be a scam. Some elaborate con targeting a grieving widow. At 36, I was young enough to be a target, but old enough to know better. If someone wanted to hurt me, now would be the time, when I was alone and broken and barely holding myself together. But Edward had mentioned Marcus by name, had said Marcus left something with him. And that phrase, "your life might depend on it," those were not words you used lightly. The mention of Jenna and Tyler specifically, the warning not to tell them, that is what made me reach for my car keys. If there was even a chance this was real, I had to know. I owed it to Marcus. I owed it to myself. The drive to downtown Ashford took 20 minutes that felt like hours. I passed the church where we held the funeral and felt my chest tighten. I passed the coffee shop where Marcus and I had our first date, the bookstore where he proposed, the park where we walked every Sunday morning when the weather was kind. Every landmark was a memory now. Every street corner was a ghost. My mind raced with questions I could not answer. What did Marcus leave? Why did he not tell me about this rental property? What did any of this have to do with Jenna? My sister and I were not close the way we used to be, but we were still family, still blood. Why would a stranger warn me not to tell her? As I drove, another memory surfaced unbidden. 6 months ago, my grandmother Helen died suddenly of a stroke. Grandmother Helen, who raised Jenna and me after our parents divorced. Helen, who left behind a family trust worth millions that I still did not fully understand. Helen, who, in her final weeks, had seemed anxious and secretive and not herself at all. I remembered the last time I saw her alive. She grabbed my hand with surprising strength and looked at me with eyes full of something that might have been fear. "Promise me you will be careful, Erin," she said. "Promise me you will watch out for yourself." At the time, I thought it was the ramblings of an old woman facing death. Now I was not so sure. The Collins building appeared on my right, a 3-story brick structure that looked like it had been standing since before the Civil War. I parked and sat in my car for a long moment, gathering courage. The building looked almost abandoned. No lights in the windows, no cars in the small lot. I almost drove away, almost convinced myself this was crazy. But Marcus's face flashed in my mind. The way he looked the morning of the accident, distracted and worried, like he wanted to tell me something but could not find the words. I got out of the car. The front door was unlocked, which felt wrong. Inside, the hallway was dim, lit by a single bulb that cast long shadows. A narrow staircase led upward, each step creaking under my weight. The smell hit me halfway up, old wood and dust and something else, something familiar, furniture polish, the same scent that always clung to Marcus's clothes when he came home from work. The second-floor hallway was even darker. Edward's office waited at the end, door slightly ajar, no light visible inside. My instinct screamed that something was wrong. Or maybe, impossibly, that something was finally right. I reached for the door, hand trembling. As I pushed it open, another scent hit me. This one stopped me cold. Cedar and sandalwood. Marcus's cologne. The cologne he wore every single day of our marriage. The cologne that should not be in this room because Marcus was dead, buried, gone forever. My heart stopped. I stepped into the dark office. An older man stood by the window, silhouetted against the gray afternoon light. He turned when I entered, and I saw fear in his weathered face. "Thank you for coming, Mrs. McCall," he said quietly. "What is this about?" My voice came out steadier than I expected. "What did my husband leave?" Movement behind him, in the shadows near the filing cabinets. Someone else was in the room. A figure stepped forward into the dim light. My knees buckled. I grabbed the doorframe to keep from falling. The room spun. My vision blurred. Because the man standing in front of me, alive and whole and looking at me with tears streaming down his face, was Marcus, my husband, the man I had buried 3 days ago. "Erin," he said. His voice. God, his voice. The voice I thought I would never hear again. "I am so sorry. I am so sorry I had to do this to you." He took a step toward me, arms reaching out, but I stepped back, pressing myself against the door. Because dead men do not speak, dead men do not apologize, dead men do not stand in dark offices waiting for their widows. "What?" I whispered. "What is happening?" Marcus's face crumbled with grief and something else. Fear. "I had to fake my death, Erin, because someone in your family is trying to kill us both. And I think I know who." The room tilted. The floor seemed to rise up to meet me. My legs gave out completely, and if Edward had not rushed forward to catch me, I would have hit the ground. They guided me to a chair, but I could not stop shaking. Every nerve in my body was firing at once, sending signals my brain refused to process. My husband was standing in front of me. My dead husband, the man whose casket I watched descend into frozen earth 3 days ago. Marcus knelt in front of me and took my hands in his. His hands were warm, real, alive. I touched his face, felt the stubble on his jaw, traced the familiar scar above his left eyebrow from a bicycle accident when he was 12. He had told me that story on our 3rd date, laughing at his own childhood clumsiness. "You are real," I whispered. "You are actually real." Tears streamed down both our faces. His shoulders shook with silent sobs, and for a moment we just sat there, 2 people drowning in an ocean of impossible emotion. I had mourned this man. I had picked out his casket, chosen the flowers for his funeral, written a eulogy that tore my heart into pieces. I had lain awake at night reaching for his side of the bed and finding only cold sheets, And now he was here, breathing, crying, holding my hands like he would never let go. But then, something shifted inside me. The shock began to crystallize into something harder, something with sharp edges. I pulled back from his touch. My grief transformed into rage so sudden and fierce it frightened me. "I buried you," I said. My voice cracked on the words. "I buried you, Marcus. I have not slept in 3 days. I have barely eaten. I thought my life was over." Before I knew what I was doing, my hand connected with his face. The slap echoed through the small office like a gunshot. Marcus did not flinch. He did not try to defend himself. He just knelt there and took it. "I deserved that," he said quietly. "You deserve worse. You deserve so much worse." But even as the words left my mouth, I was pulling him into my arms, holding him so tight I could feel his heartbeat against my chest. He was alive. Whatever else was true, whatever madness had led us to this moment, my husband was alive. We stayed like that for a long moment, neither of us willing to let go. But finally I pulled away, wiping my eyes with the back of my hand, trying to compose myself enough to think clearly. "Explain," I said. "Now. All of it." Marcus looked at Edward, who nodded gravely from his position by the window. Marcus took a deep breath, and I saw him steeling himself for what came next. "Everything I am about to tell you is going to sound insane," he said. "But I need you to listen. I need you to hear all of it before you react. I just found out my dead husband is alive. I think we are past the point of normal reactions." Marcus almost smiled, but the expression died before it reached his eyes. He sat back on his heels and looked up at me with a face full of sorrow. "It started 6 months ago," he said, "with your grandmother." I stiffened in my chair. "Grandma Helen? What does she have to do with this?" "Everything, Aaron. She has everything to do with this." Marcus paused, gathering his thoughts. When he spoke again, his voice was heavy with a truth he had been carrying alone for far too long. "Your grandmother did not die of a stroke." I felt the words hit me like a physical blow. "What are you talking about?" "The doctors said it was a stroke. They said her heart just gave out." "The doctors lied," Marcus said. "Or at least one doctor did. The one who signed her death certificate." The room seemed to shrink around me. "Marcus, you are scaring me." He took my hands again, and this time I did not pull away. "Aaron, your grandmother was murdered." The word hung in the air like a gunshot. Murdered. My grandmother, the woman who raised me and Jenna after our parents' bitter divorce, who taught me to bake apple pie and play piano, who held me when I cried over broken hearts and broken dreams. Murdered. I could not speak, could not breathe, could only stare at my husband and pray that he was wrong. Marcus continued, his voice steady despite the horror of what he was revealing. 2 weeks before Helen died, she called me at my office. "Not you, Aaron, me," and that was unusual. Your grandmother rarely called me directly. "What did she say?" Marcus's face darkened with the memory. Her voice was shaking. She said, "Marcus, I need to tell someone. I think someone is trying to hurt me." My heart clenched. She said that? Those exact words? Those exact words. I asked her what she meant. Who would want to hurt her? She said she could not explain over the phone, but that she had changed her will the month before. And ever since then, things had been wrong. Wrong how? Marcus glanced at Edward, who moved to his desk and began pulling documents from a locked drawer. Marcus turned back to me. She said her medication tasted different. She said she found her medical files moved in her home office, papers she was certain she had not touched. And she said Tyler had been asking strange questions about the trust. The name hit me like ice water. Tyler? Jenna's fiancé? Helen asked me to promise that if anything happened to her, I would look into it. She asked me to protect you. I felt tears burning my eyes. Why did she not tell me? Why did she tell you instead of me? Because she was afraid, Aaron, afraid that if she told you, you would confront Jenna. And she was not sure yet. She did not want to destroy your relationship with your sister over a suspicion that might be wrong. But she told you. Marcus nodded. Because I am an accountant. Because I know how to follow money. Because I am not blood, so I could investigate without anyone in your family knowing. Edward approached with a thick manila folder and set it on the small table beside my chair. Helen gave this to me 3 weeks before she died, he said quietly. She told me if anything happened to her, I should give it to Marcus. I looked at the folder like it might bite me. What is in it? Marcus opened it and spread the contents across the table. Documents, photographs, bank statements, printouts of emails and phone records. The evidence of a crime I had never imagined. This is what your grandmother found, Marcus said. This is why she died. He walked me through it piece by piece. The Whitmore Family Trust, established by my great-grandfather Arthur in 1948, currently worth $4.2 million. Helen was the sole trustee, with full authority to manage distributions and change beneficiaries. For decades she had managed it conservatively, letting it grow, living simply despite her wealth. But 8 months ago, Helen noticed discrepancies in the quarterly statements. Small withdrawals from a secondary investment account. $2,000 here, $5,000 there. Amounts small enough to miss if you were not paying attention. But Helen always paid attention. Edward slid a worn leather ledger across the table. Your grandmother kept meticulous records, he said. She tracked every penny of that trust since 1973. I opened the ledger and saw Helen's elegant handwriting, her careful calculations, dates circled in red ink, question marks in the margins. At the bottom of one page she had written, "Someone is stealing from the family. Who?" The total missing was $53,000 over 18 months. Not enough to cripple a $4 million trust, but enough to notice if you were looking. And Helen was always looking. She traced the withdrawals, Marcus continued. They were made using her account credentials, but from a computer she did not own. She hired a private IT consultant to find the source. I knew what he was going to say before he said it. The trail led to Hartford Mutual Bank, Marcus said. The same bank where Tyler Brennan works as an investment associate. I closed my eyes, trying to make the pieces fit into some other picture, some configuration that did not make my sister's fiancé a thief. But the evidence was right there in front of me, documented in my grandmother's careful hand. Helen confronted him, Marcus said. 2 months before she died, she invited Jenna to lunch and laid out everything she had found. The withdrawals, the computer trail, all of it. And Jenna denied it, I said. She must have denied it. Marcus's expression hardened. She lied. She looked your grandmother in the eye and said she had no idea what Tyler was doing. But Helen did not believe her. Edward spoke up, his voice heavy with old grief. Helen told me that conversation broke her heart. She said Jenna did not even flinch, just lied to her like it was nothing. I felt something crack inside me. The foundation of everything I thought I knew about my family was crumbling. After that confrontation, Marcus continued, Helen changed her will. The original split was 50-50 between you and Jenna. But she changed it to 70% for you, 30% for Jenna. She also added a clause that if either beneficiary was convicted of a crime against the trust, or against Helen herself, they would be completely disinherited. I understood immediately. She was protecting herself, protecting me. She hoped it would be enough, Marcus said. She thought that if Jenna and Tyler knew they would get less, they might just accept it and move on. But they did not accept it. No. Marcus's voice went cold. When Tyler found out about the new will through his contacts at the bank, everything changed. Suddenly, Helen was not just an inconvenience. She was a threat. If she died while the new will was in effect, Jenna and Tyler would lose over $1 million. But if something happened to Helen before the will was finalized with the court... The will was filed 2 weeks before she died, I said, the timeline clicking into place. They had a 2-week window, and they used it. Marcus pulled out another set of documents, medical records, prescription histories. A photograph of an older man in a white coat, silver-haired and distinguished. Your grandmother had a heart condition, Marcus explained. Managed for years by Dr. Raymond Voss, her cardiologist for over a decade. But 6 weeks before Helen died, Dr. Voss suddenly retired and moved to Florida. A new doctor took over her care. Dr. Nathan Mercer. I stared at the photograph. I had never seen this man before. Dr. Mercer changed Helen's medication, Marcus said. He told her it was a newer, more effective treatment. What he did not tell her was that the new medication would interact badly with her existing heart condition. It caused arrhythmias that mimicked stroke symptoms. You are saying a doctor murdered my grandmother. I am saying a doctor prescribed medication he knew would kill her. And that doctor played golf with Tyler Brennan every Saturday for 2 years. Edward added quietly, I pulled Dr. Mercer's financial records. He received a $200,000 consulting fee from an offshore account 3 days after Helen's death certificate was signed. I thought I might be sick. The room was spinning again, but this time it was not from shock. It was from rage. Pure, burning rage. They killed her for money, I said. They killed her for a trust fund. Marcus nodded slowly. And when I started asking questions, when I got too close to the truth, they tried to kill me too. He reached into the folder one more time and pulled out a single sheet of paper, a printout of a text message exchange. Edward recovered these from Helen's phone before it disappeared, Marcus said. They are between Jenna and Tyler, dated 1 week before Helen's death. I took the paper with trembling hands and read the words that would destroy everything I thought I knew about my sister. Tyler, the new meds are working. Doctor says it won't be long now. Jenna, good. I can't keep pretending everything is fine. She looks at me like she knows. Tyler, she suspects but she can't prove anything. Just keep visiting her. Act normal. It'll be over soon. Jenna, what about Erin? Tyler, don't worry about Erin. Once the old woman is gone and you can test the will, we'll have everything. Your sister won't know what hit her. Jenna, I love you. Tyler, I love you too. 1 more week, baby. 1 more week and we're rich. I read the texts 3 times, 4 times. My hands were shaking so badly the paper rattled. No, I whispered. No, this is not. Jenna would never. Marcus's voice was gentle but firm. I am sorry, Erin. Your sister knew. She knew what Tyler was planning and she helped him do it. I looked up at my husband, tears streaming down my face. She killed our grandmother. My own sister helped murder the woman who raised us. Marcus nodded slowly. And when I started asking questions, when I got too close to the truth, they tried to kill me too. That is why I had to fake my death, Erin, because they were coming for me. And once they realized I knew, they would come for you next. The texts blurred in my vision, but the words were seared into my brain. My sister, my baby sister. The girl I taught to ride a bike, who I held when she cried about boys, who I stood beside at our grandmother's funeral while she wept crocodile tears. She was a murderer. And according to my not-so-dead husband, I was next on her list. I read those text messages until the words stopped making sense, until they became just shapes on paper that could not possibly mean what they said. My sister, my baby sister. The girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. The woman I stood beside at our grandmother's funeral, holding her hand while she sobbed. She had known. She had helped plan it. She had watched our grandmother die and then cried crocodile tears at her grave. This cannot be real, I said, my voice hollow. Someone must have faked these messages. Someone is trying to frame Jenna. Marcus shook his head gently. Edward recovered them directly from Helen's phone before it disappeared. The phone company confirmed the numbers matched Jenna and Tyler's devices. The timestamps are verified. It is real, Erin. My legs would not hold me. I sank back into the chair, my entire body going numb. Physical symptoms of shock rolled through me in waves. My hands felt like they belonged to someone else. A high-pitched ringing filled my ears. My vision narrowed until Marcus's face was the only thing I could see clearly. I thought of Jenna as a child, 6 years old with messy pigtails and a gap-toothed smile, holding my hand on her first day of kindergarten because she was too scared to walk in alone. I thought of her at 12, crying in my bedroom after a boy at school made fun of her braces, and me telling her that someday she would be beautiful and that boy would regret ever being mean to her. I thought of her at 25, glowing with happiness when she introduced me to Tyler, telling me she had finally found the one. How did that little girl become a monster? She was at the funeral, I whispered. She cried. She gave a eulogy about how much Grandma meant to her. She talked about Sunday dinners and Christmas traditions, and how Helen taught her to be strong. Marcus knelt in front of me again. She has been playing a role for months, Aaron, maybe years. I looked up sharply. Years? Marcus glanced at Edward, who nodded slowly. There is more you need to know about the trust, Edward said. About why this happened, about what your grandmother discovered before the theft even began. Then tell me. My voice came out harder than I intended. Tell me everything. I need to understand how my sister became a killer. Edward moved to his desk and pulled out a thick binder marked Whitmore Family Trust in faded gold lettering. He carried it to the table and opened it carefully, revealing decades of documents, photographs, and financial statements. Your great-grandfather, Arthur Whitmore, built a small manufacturing empire in Connecticut in the 1940s, Edward began. When he died in 1978, he left everything in a trust for his descendants. Your grandmother Helen became the sole trustee in 1992 after her mother passed. I knew some of this. Helen had mentioned the trust occasionally, usually when explaining why she lived so simply despite owning a large house and never seeming to worry about money. The current value of the Whitmore Family Trust is $4.2 million, Marcus said. It generates roughly $200,000 annually in interest and dividends alone. Whoever controls it controls a small fortune. $4 million. I knew Grandma was comfortable, but I never imagined it was that much. Edward smiled sadly. Your grandmother lived simply by choice, not necessity. She believed wealth should be a safety net, not a lifestyle. She used to say that money was like water. Hold it too tightly and it slips through your fingers. Let it flow, and it nourishes everything it touches. That sounded exactly like Helen. I could almost hear her voice saying those words. The trust generates income, Marcus continued, but the principal has been growing for decades through careful investment. It is a significant inheritance. Significant enough to kill for, apparently. That is why Tyler targeted Jenna, I said, the realization crystallizing. He did not fall in love with her. He researched her. Marcus nodded grimly. Tyler Brennan did not meet your sister by accident at that charity gala 3 years ago. He knew exactly who she was, who her family was, and what she stood to inherit. He positioned himself to access that money. Your sister was not his girlfriend. She was his mark. The word made me flinch. Mark, like a target, like prey. Edward pulled out a stack of bank statements and spread them across the table. Your grandmother first noticed the discrepancies 8 months ago. She was reviewing quarterly statements, something she did religiously. Helen never trusted anyone else to manage her money. She checked every number herself. I remembered that about her. Every Christmas, while Jenna and I played with our presents, Helen would be at her desk with a calculator and a stack of receipts, balancing her accounts down to the penny. She found small withdrawals from a secondary investment account linked to the trust, Marcus explained. 2,000 here, 5,000 there. Amount small enough to miss if you were not paying attention. But your grandmother always paid attention. Edward slid a worn leather ledger across the table. I recognized it immediately. Helen's personal financial journal, the one she kept in her desk drawer and updated every Sunday after church. I opened it with trembling hands. Helen's elegant handwriting filled the pages, neat columns of numbers and dates stretching back years. But near the end, the entries changed. Red ink circles around certain dates. Question marks in the margins. Calculations redone multiple times with different results. At the bottom of one page, in handwriting that shook slightly, Helen had written, "Someone is stealing from the family." Who? $53,000 over 18 months, Marcus said. Not enough to cripple the trust, but enough to notice. And once Helen started looking, she found the trail. She traced the withdrawals to computers at Hartford Mutual Bank, Edward continued. The same bank where Tyler Brennan works. I closed my eyes, trying to imagine my grandmother sitting at her desk, piecing together this betrayal. She must have felt so alone, so afraid. And she had not told me because she did not want to destroy my relationship with Jenna over a suspicion. As Marcus talked, my mind drifted to another time, a better time. The summers I spent at Grandmother Helen's house in Ashford, when the world was simple and family meant safety. I was 12 years old, spending July at Helen's colonial house on Maple Street. I could still smell the lavender that grew wild in her garden, still taste the chocolate chip cookies fresh from her oven. Helen taught me to play piano that summer, sitting beside me on the bench, her patient fingers guiding mine over the keys. She taught me to bake her famous apple pie, to balance a checkbook, to write thank you notes on proper stationery. A woman should always know where her money is, she used to say. Never let anyone else control your finances. Independence is the greatest gift you can give yourself. I loved those summers. They were an escape from my parents' bitter divorce, from the constant fighting, from feeling caught in the middle of two people who had once loved each other and now could barely be in the same room. But Jenna hated those summers. She was 4 years younger than me, always feeling left out, always competing for Helen's attention. I remembered her throwing tantrums when Helen praised my piano playing. I remembered her sulking in corners when I got to help with the grown-up cooking while she was sent outside to play. Helen tried to include both of us equally. I know she did, but Jenna never believed it. One summer I must have been 15, I overheard her crying to our mother on the phone. "Grandma loves Erin more. She always has. It is not fair. I work so hard to make her proud, and she still looks at Erin like she hung the moon." I dismissed it at the time as typical sibling rivalry. Sisters competed. That was normal. But sitting here now, with evidence of murder spread across the table in front of me, I wondered how long that jealousy had been festering. How many years had Jenna spent keeping score, building resentment, waiting for a chance to even the scales? Tyler did not create Jenna's darkness, I realized. He just gave it permission to emerge. Marcus's voice pulled me back to the present. "Erin, are you with me?" I blinked, realizing I had been silent for a long moment. I was thinking about the summers, about how different Jenna and I always were. "Helen noticed too," Marcus said softly. "That is part of why she changed the will." Edward pulled out another document, an audio recording device, old but functional. "Helen confronted Jenna 2 months before she died," he said. "She recorded the conversation without telling her." He pressed play, and my grandmother's voice filled the room. Hearing it again after 6 months was like a knife to my heart. "Jenna, I know about the withdrawals. I know Tyler has been accessing trust accounts." Silence on the recording. Then Jenna's voice, tight and defensive. "I do not know what you are talking about, Grandma. Do not lie to me, child. I have seen the records. $50,000 is missing. Even if that were true, it is family money. Tyler and I are going to be family. Tyler is a thief, and if you knew about this and said nothing, you are complicit." More silence. Then Jenna's voice changed, became harder, sharper. A voice I barely recognized. "You always favored Erin. This is just an excuse to cut me out. This has nothing to do with favoritism. This is about integrity, about trust." "Trust? You want to talk about trust? You are the one who controls everything. You decide who gets what, who is worthy, who is not. That is not family, Grandma. That is tyranny." Helen's voice broke slightly on the recording. "I am giving you a chance to make this right, Jenna. Leave Tyler, return the money. We can move past this." And then Jenna's final words. cold as ice. I am not leaving Tyler, and I am not returning anything. Do whatever you want with your precious trust. See if I care. The recording ended. Tears were streaming down my face. That was not my sister's voice. That was a stranger wearing Jenna's face. But deep down, I recognized something in it. The petulance, the resentment, the chip on her shoulder that had always been there, just hidden beneath smiles and I love yous. After that confrontation, Helen acted fast, Marcus said. She met with her attorney and revised her will. 70% to you, 30% to Jenna. She also added a clause that if either of you was convicted of a crime against the trust or against Helen herself, you would be fully disinherited. She knew, I whispered. She knew she was in danger. Edward's voice was heavy with grief. She told me as much. I begged her to go to the police, but she refused. She said she could not bear to see her granddaughter in handcuffs. She hoped changing the will would be enough. She underestimated them, Marcus said. She could not imagine her own granddaughter would choose money over her life. The timeline tightens, I said, pieces falling into place. Helen changed her will on August 15th. She died on September 20th. 5 weeks. Tyler found out about the will change within days, Marcus confirmed. His contact at the bank leaked the information. By August 20th, he had already reached out to Dr. Mercer. By September 1st, Helen's medication had been switched. 5 weeks from will change to murder. They killed her in 5 weeks. I could barely get the words out. Like she was nothing. Like 63 years of life meant nothing compared to money. That is who Tyler is. And that is who Jenna chose to become. I stood abruptly, needing to move, needing to breathe. I paced the small office, my mind racing. Okay, Helen changed the will. They killed her. The will was executed. I got 70%. So they lost. It is over. Marcus shook his head slowly. It is not over, Aaron. It is just beginning. I stopped pacing. What do you mean? After Helen's death, the trust was distributed according to the new will. You received 70%, roughly $2.9 million. Jenna received 30%, about $1.3 million. That should have been enough. $1.3 million is more money than most people see in a lifetime, but Jenna and Tyler are not most people, and they want it all. Marcus's jaw tightened. 2 weeks after Helen's funeral, I overheard Tyler on the phone. I was at their house helping Jenna with some paperwork. Tyler did not know I was in the next room. What did he say? His voice dropped. He said, "The old woman was phase 1. Now we need to work on the sister." Once Aaron is out of the picture, Jenna inherits everything as next of kin. The words hit me like a physical blow. Out of the picture. He meant kill me. You are worth $2.9 million dead, Marcus said. And once I started asking questions about Helen's death, I became a liability too. The car accident, I whispered. It was not an accident. 3 weeks ago, I was driving home late from work. A black SUV ran me off the road on Miller's Curve. I only survived because I saw them coming and braked early. That is when I knew I had to disappear. They thought they killed me. And as long as they believe that, I can help you take them down. I sank back into my chair, the weight of everything crushing down on me. My sister was planning to kill me. My sister, who brought me casseroles after Marcus's funeral and held me while I cried, was calculating how to make my death look like an accident. So I am next, I said. They are going to try to kill me. Marcus took my hands. Not if we stop them first. But Aaron, there is something else you need to know. What else could there possibly be? You cannot go home tonight. Tyler has been watching your house for days. And this morning, before Edward called you, his voice caught, Marcus struggled to continue. This morning, Jenna asked your neighbor when you usually leave for work, Edward added grimly. They are already planning their next move. Marcus squeezed my hands. Which means we need to plan ours. My sister was tracking my schedule. My sister, who brought me casseroles and held me while I cried, was calculating the best time to have me killed. And somewhere in my grief-fogged brain, A cold, hard voice whispered something I never thought I would think about my own flesh and blood. Then we will just have to strike first. The question burned in my throat, demanding to be asked, even though part of me was not sure I wanted the answer. I stared at Marcus, my mind racing with everything I had just learned. The trust fund, the murder, the text messages. Tyler's plan to kill me. But one thing still did not make sense. One piece of this nightmare puzzle refused to fit. How? I finally asked. How did you fake your own death? I saw your body, Marcus. I identified you at the morgue. Marcus and Edward exchanged a look. The kind of look that said, this is where it gets complicated. You did not see my body, Aaron. Marcus's voice was gentle but firm. You saw what we wanted you to see. That is impossible. I touched your hand. It was cold. It was you. It was a body, but it was not mine. I felt the room spin again. Whose body was it? Edward stepped forward. A John Doe from the county morgue. Homeless man, no family, died of exposure 3 days before Marcus's accident. Similar height, similar build. No one to claim him. No one to miss him. My stomach turned. You used a dead homeless man to fake my husband's death? Marcus reached for my hands. I know how it sounds. But Aaron, it was the only way. And I could not tell you. If you knew, if your grief was not real, Tyler would have seen through it instantly. He was watching you. He is still watching you. Your authentic devastation was the only thing that kept you alive. The betrayal stung. Not just that Marcus had deceived me, but that he was right. My grief had been real. My tears had been real. And that authentic devastation, that bone-deep sorrow that had nearly destroyed me, had been my only protection. Marcus continued, his voice heavy with memories he clearly wished he could forget. It started with small things. About a month after Helen's funeral, I noticed my office computer had been accessed when I was not there. Files moved on my desk. Nothing taken, just disturbed. Like someone wanted me to know they had been there. A warning, the first of many. Then a car started following me home. Black SUV, tinted windows. Always staying 2 blocks back, just close enough that I would notice. It followed me for 3 nights in a row. Did you get a license plate? Marcus shook his head. They were too careful. But then the messages started. He pulled out his phone, scrolled to a screenshot, and showed me the screen. The text was brief and terrifying. Stop asking questions about Helen Whitmore. I deleted it immediately, Marcus said, but I knew they were on to me. Then came the final warning. 1 week before my accident. He paused, and I saw pain flash across his face. I came home late from work, found the front door unlocked. I was certain I had locked it that morning. I searched the entire house. Nothing was taken. Nothing was obviously disturbed. Except one thing. What? A photograph of you. It had been on the living room mantel, the one from our anniversary trip to Vermont. I found it on the kitchen counter, and underneath it, a note. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. The note said, "She is next if you do not stop." I felt ice spread through my veins. They threatened me to get to you. That is when I understood. They were not just going to kill me. They were going to make me watch them destroy you first, use you as leverage to keep me silent, and then eliminate us both once they had what they wanted. So you decided to disappear. I could not go to the police. Tyler has connections everywhere. His uncle is a city councilman with friends in the department. I could not warn you because you would have confronted Jenna, and then they would have killed you both. I needed to vanish completely, in a way that would make Tyler believe he had won. Marcus knew he could not fake his death alone. He needed help from people Tyler did not know about, people completely outside his surveillance network. The first person I contacted was Edward, Marcus said, nodding toward the older man. Helen had trusted him with everything, her backup phone, her evidence, her suspicions. I knew I could trust him, too. Edward's voice was rough with emotion. Helen was like a sister to me. We served on the town council together back in the 80s. When she died, I knew something was wrong. I just could not prove it. When Marcus came to me with his plan, I agreed immediately. Edward provided the safe house, Marcus continued. His family owns a cabin in Vermont, completely off the grid. No paper trail, no connection to me or to you. It is where I have been hiding for the past 3 weeks. But they needed someone else. Someone with medical expertise who could make a fake death look completely real. That is where Dr. Nathan Cole came in, Marcus said. Who? Edward answered. Nathan was Helen's personal physician for 20 years before he retired and moved to Maine. They stayed in touch. When Marcus told him what really happened to Helen, how her medication was switched, how Dr. Mercer betrayed his oath, Nathan was furious. He agreed to help immediately. Dr. Cole is a retired forensic pathologist, Marcus added. 32 years of experience. He knew exactly how to stage an accident scene that would fool everyone, and he had contacts at the county morgue who owed him favors. Most importantly, Tyler Brennan had no idea Dr. Cole existed. Marcus's voice grew quieter as he described what happened 3 weeks ago. The night the world thought he died. October 3rd. 11:47 at night. I was driving home on Route 9, approaching Miller's Curve, the most dangerous stretch of road in Ashford. Sharp turn, steep drop, no guardrail for a 100-foot section. 3 people had died there in the past decade. I knew Tyler's people would be watching. I had seen the black SUV in my rearview mirror when I left the office. They were not even trying to hide anymore. What they did not know was that Dr. Cole was waiting in the woods near the curve. He had the body from the county morgue already prepared, dressed in my clothes, wearing my watch, carrying my wallet. I drove toward the curve, watching the headlights in my mirror grow closer. The SUV was accelerating. This time they were not keeping their distance. This time they intended to finish what they had started. I had seconds to act. I jerked the wheel hard right, sending my car toward the section where the guardrail was missing. But instead of crashing through, I braked at the last possible moment, threw open the door, and rolled into the drainage ditch. Dr. Cole was there, pulling me into the darkness before I even stopped rolling. Behind us, my car, rigged with a delayed accelerator, continued forward. It smashed through the gap in the guardrail and plummeted into the ravine below. The SUV stopped. I watched through the brush as someone got out and walked to the edge. They looked down at the wreckage for a long moment. Then they got back in the car and drove away. They did not check further. Why would they? No one could survive that fall. And the body? Dr. Cole had already placed it in the driver's seat before I started driving that night. The fire that erupted when the car hit the bottom destroyed most identifying features. The dental records matched, because Dr. Cole had accessed my file months earlier and made subtle alterations. By the time the police arrived, there was nothing left but a burned corpse and a grieving widow waiting to be notified. My hands were shaking, but I identified the body. They took me to the morgue. I said it was you. Marcus's face crumpled with guilt. You identified what was left after a car fire and a 50-foot fall. You saw a body bag. You saw a hand. The hand was real, just not mine. I felt sick. How did they manage that? Edward spoke carefully. Dr. Cole removed the deceased man's hand before the accident. He preserved it, made sure it matched Marcus's general appearance. In the dim light of the morgue, with you already expecting to see your husband. I saw what I expected to see, I whispered. I am so sorry, Aaron. Marcus's voice broke. I know what I put you through. I watched the morgue through the security camera. I saw you collapse. I saw you screaming. I almost broke cover right there. I almost ran in and told you everything. You watched me identify a stranger's body as my husband, and you did not stop it. The anger was back, mixing with relief, mixing with something I could not name. Every second was agony, Marcus said. But if I had revealed myself, Tyler would have known. The entire plan would have collapsed. And then we would both be dead for real. So instead, you let me bury a homeless man in your grave. You let me grieve for 3 days. You let me think my entire life was over. To save your life, to give us a chance to expose them, to get justice for Helen. Long silence. I stared at this man I had married, this man I had mourned, this man who had deceived me to protect me. Part of me wanted to hit him again. Part of me wanted to hold him and never let go. I understand, I finally said. I hate it, but I understand. Marcus squeezed my hands with relief. There is one more person you need to know about, someone who can help us prove everything. Who? Ruth Gonzalez, Edward said. She was Helen's housekeeper for 15 years. I remembered Ruth, a small, quiet woman with kind eyes who had been devoted to my grandmother. She disappeared right after Helen's funeral. I assumed she had found another position. Ruth was at Helen's house the day before she died, Marcus explained. She overheard a phone conversation between Helen and someone Helen called that Brennan boy, Tyler. Helen was shouting. Ruth said she had never heard your grandmother raise her voice in 15 years of working for her. She heard Helen say, "I know what you did. I have proof. And if anything happens to me, it goes straight to the police." The next day, Helen was dead. And Ruth? 3 days after Helen's funeral, Tyler showed up at Ruth's apartment. All smiles and sympathy. He asked if Helen had left her anything. Any documents, any keys, anything at all. Ruth lied. Said no. That night, someone tried to break into her apartment. Ruth packed a bag and disappeared. She has been hiding in a cabin in Maine ever since. Dr. Cole has been in contact with her. She has evidence that could change everything. What kind of evidence? Photographs of documents Helen showed her. A recording of that final phone call Tyler does not know exists. And Helen's original medication bottles, the ones from before Dr. Mercer switched them. I felt hope kindle in my chest for the first time since this nightmare began. Ruth's testimony and evidence could prove Helen was murdered. Combined with what Edward has, combined with what I have gathered, we have enough to bring Tyler down, Marcus said. But then his expression darkened. Then why have you not gone to the police already? Because we do not have direct evidence against Jenna. Those text messages prove she knew, but a good lawyer could argue they were taken out of context. That she was a victim of Tyler's manipulation. That she did not understand what was really happening. Edward nodded. We need Jenna to confess. On record. Undeniably. Something no lawyer can explain away. I began to understand. And you need me to get that confession. Marcus took my hands again. I know I am asking too much. After everything you have been through, after everything I put you through, I have no right to ask anything. But you are going to ask anyway. We need you to go back, to your house, to your life. We need you to be the grieving widow who is falling apart. Edward continued. Tyler and Jenna will come to you. They will offer to help with finances, with paperwork, with the estate. They will try to get you to sign a power of attorney. And when they do, Marcus said, when they think you are vulnerable and broken and alone. I finished his sentence. I will be recording everything. Silence fell over the room. The weight of what they were asking pressed down on me. Go back into the lion's den. Smile at the people who murdered my grandmother. Let them think they had won while secretly gathering evidence to destroy them. What if they try to kill me before I get enough evidence? You will not be alone, Marcus said firmly. I will be watching. Edward will be watching. And I have one more ally. Someone inside law enforcement who believes us. Who? Detective Laura Chen, Hartford Police Department. She investigated Helen's death originally. She was told to close the case. Natural causes, nothing suspicious. But she never believed it. A detective? Why did she not pursue it? Because her captain told her to drop it. The same captain who plays poker every week with a city councilman who happens to be Tyler Brennan's uncle. My stomach dropped. Tyler's corruption goes that high? We are not just fighting a killer, Aaron. We are fighting a network, but Chen is on our side. She has been building her own file, off the record. When we have enough evidence, she will take it to the state attorney general, bypass the local corruption entirely. I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the gray Ashford sky. Somewhere out there, my sister was planning my murder. Somewhere out there, a network of corrupt officials was protecting the man who killed my grandmother. I thought of Helen, of Ruth hiding in fear, of Marcus watching me grieve from the shadows. I thought of Jenna's voice on that recording, cold and cruel and utterly unrecognizable. When I turned back to Marcus and Edward, my eyes were dry. My voice was steady. Tell me exactly what I need to do. First thing tomorrow, you go home. You play the grieving widow. And when Jenna and Tyler show up with their sympathy and their schemes, I will be ready. Edward handed me a small device no bigger than a button. Wear this at all times. It records everything within 20 feet. And it has a panic button. If anything goes wrong, press it twice. We will be there in minutes. I took the device, felt its weight in my palm. So small, so insignificant looking. But it was a weapon. My weapon. I was about to become bait for my sister's trap. I was about to pretend to be broken while hunting the people who had destroyed my family. I left Edward's office that evening as a different woman than the one who had arrived. 3 hours ago, I was a widow drowning in grief. Now I was a soldier preparing for war, and my enemy wore my sister's face. The house felt different when I walked through the door the next morning. Not because anything had changed, but because I had. The same yellow curtains hung in the kitchen windows. The same family photos lined the hallway. The same smell of lavender from the diffuser Marcus had bought me last Christmas. But I was not the same woman who had left this house yesterday morning, numb with grief and barely able to function. Now I was a weapon, and this house was my battlefield. I paused at the threshold, took a deep breath, and prepared to become someone else. The recording device was pinned inside my bra, small and undetectable, always listening. I touched Marcus's coat still hanging by the front door, let the grief wash over my face. The grief was real. I was still mourning, just not for the reason anyone watching would think. I was mourning the sister I thought I had, the family I thought I knew, the life I thought was waiting for me. I moved through the house slowly, deliberately. Marcus had warned me that Tyler might have cameras inside. Every movement had to look like a broken woman barely holding herself together. I picked up Marcus's coffee mug from the sink, the one I had not been able to wash since the accident. I held it to my chest and let tears fall. The tears were real, too. I did not have to fake those. As I set down the mug, my eyes caught something that made my blood run cold. A small black object wedged behind the fruit bowl on the kitchen counter. It was no bigger than a button, but I recognized it immediately. A listening device. My heart rate spiked, but I kept my face neutral. I pretended not to notice. I continued my performance of grief, making coffee I did not want, sitting at the kitchen table and staring at nothing. All while knowing that somewhere Tyler Brennan was listening to every sound I made. He was not just planning to kill me. He was already inside my home. 2 hours later, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Jenna and Tyler standing on my porch, picture perfect in their concern. Jenna held a casserole dish covered in tin foil. Tyler carried grocery bags bulging with food I would never eat. They looked like the ideal supportive family, rushing to help their grieving relative. "Oh, Aaron," Jenna's voice dripped with sympathy. "We have been so worried about you." She pulled me into a hug before I could react. Her arms wrapped around me, familiar and strange at the same time. These were the same arms that had comforted me after our parents' divorce. The same arms that had held me when my first boyfriend broke my heart. The same arms that had helped orchestrate our grandmother's murder. I forced myself not to stiffen, not to pull away. I let her hold me and patted her back like a grateful sister should. "Thank you for coming," I said, my voice carefully weak. "I do not know what I would do without you." Tyler stepped inside without being invited, already scanning the room with eyes that missed nothing. He set the grocery bags on the counter, right next to the listening device he had planted, and turned to me with a smile that never reached his eyes. "You should not be alone right now," he said. "Family needs to stick together." I watched him through lowered lashes as Jenna bustled around my kitchen, putting away groceries and making sympathetic noises. Tyler's eyes landed on Marcus's desk in the corner of the living room, the desk where Marcus had kept his files, the desk where evidence of his investigation might still be hidden. Tyler lingered there a moment too long before catching himself. "Is there anything we can help with?" he asked smoothly. "Paperwork? Bills?" I know how overwhelming all of this can be after a loss. I have not been able to touch anything yet. I let my voice tremble. It is all still his. Of course. Tyler's smile widened slightly. "When you are ready, I am happy to help sort through the financial stuff. That is my specialty, after all." I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to tell him I knew exactly what his specialty was. Fraud, theft, murder. But I smiled weakly and said nothing. Jenna settled me on the couch like I was an invalid and brought me tea I had not asked for. She sat beside me, took my hand, and stroked it gently with her thumb. The gesture was so familiar, so sisterly, that for a moment I almost forgot what she was. "Have you eaten anything?" she asked. "You look so thin, Aaron. You have to take care of yourself." "I have not had much appetite." "I know this is hard to think about, but have you talked to Marcus's life insurance company yet?" There it was, the first probe. I kept my face carefully blank. "Insurance?" "I have not thought about any of that." "It is important, sweetie. You need to know where you stand financially. Marcus would want you taken care of." Tyler spoke up from across the room, where he was pretending to examine a bookshelf while actually studying the papers on Marcus's desk. Most policies have a time frame for filing claims. You do not want to miss any deadlines. "I do not even know if he had life insurance," I said, letting confusion color my voice. "He handled all of that." Jenna and Tyler exchanged a quick glance. So fast I almost missed it. A silent communication between co-conspirators. "What about his will?" Jenna pressed. "Did Marcus have a will?" I shook my head, letting my shoulders slump. "I do not know. I do not know anything. He took care of everything and now he is gone and I do not know what to do." I buried my face in my hands, let my shoulders shake with sobs. Jenna pulled me close and made soothing sounds. "Shh, it is okay. That is why we are here. We will help you figure everything out." They were not asking out of concern. They were fishing for information. How much did I know? How much had Marcus known? And most importantly, how easy would I be to manipulate? An hour passed. Tyler excused himself to use the bathroom. He was gone for 12 minutes. I counted every second. When he returned, his expression was carefully neutral, but I noticed tension in his shoulders that had not been there before. He had been searching, looking for something, or making sure something was not there. I excused myself, saying I needed to splash water on my face. In the bathroom, I locked the door and checked the medicine cabinet. Everything had been moved. My medications were in different positions than I had left them. My blood pressure pills, my antihistamines, my multivitamins. Every bottle had been turned so the labels faced outward. Someone had read every single one. My blood ran cold as I remembered what Marcus told me. This was exactly how Helen's murder started. A new doctor, changed medications, a natural death that no one would question. Were they already planning the same thing for me? For a moment, genuine terror gripped me. I was alone in a house with two people who had killed before and would kill again. But then I touched the recording device through my shirt and felt its reassuring presence against my heart. I was not alone. Marcus was listening. Edward was nearby. Detective Chen knew the plan. I looked at myself in the mirror, saw the fear in my eyes, and forced it down. When I walked back into the living room, my face showed only exhaustion and grief. Tyler was now sitting at Marcus's desk, papers spread in front of him. "Sorry," he said without a trace of apology. "I noticed some things were falling. Did not want you to lose anything important." "Thank you," I said. That is very thoughtful." The words tasted like poison, but I said them with a grateful smile. Jenna and Tyler left around 3 in the afternoon, promising to return tomorrow. "Call us if you need anything," Jenna said at the door. "Anything at all." The moment their car disappeared down the street, I exhaled for what felt like the first time in hours. But I did not have long to decompress. 30 minutes later, another knock at the door made me jump. It was Claire Mitchell, my colleague from Lincoln Elementary, where I taught 3rd grade. Claire was 52, divorced, and sharp-eyed. She had a way of noticing things other people missed. We had been friends for 8 years, ever since she helped me survive my first year of teaching. "I brought soup," she said, holding up a container, "and I need to talk to you about something." I let her in, grateful for a friendly face. But something in her expression made me nervous. She glanced around the living room before speaking, almost like she was checking to make sure we were alone. "Aaron, I know this might sound crazy and maybe I should not say anything, but I saw something strange." "What is it?" "The day Marcus died. The morning of his accident. I saw Tyler Brennan at First National Bank downtown." My heart skipped. "Tyler? Are you sure?" "Positive. I was there to deposit a check. He was in the private office area talking to someone. He looked agitated. Kept checking his phone." "That is not unusual," I said carefully. "He works in banking." "Hartford Mutual, not First National," Claire pointed out. And Aaron, when he saw me, his face went white. He practically ran out the back entrance. First National Bank handled the Whitmore Family Trust. Tyler was there the morning Marcus died. Doing what? Checking on the trust accounts? Making sure everything was in place before the murder? "I did not think much of it at the time," Claire continued. "But then, at the funeral, the way he and Jenna were acting, something felt off." "Off how?" Claire leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Jenna kept watching you, not like a worried sister, like she was studying you. And Tyler kept checking his watch, like he had somewhere else to be." She hesitated. "I know grief makes people act strange. But Aaron, I have known you for 8 years. I have seen you with your sister. That woman at the funeral did not look like someone who had lost a brother-in-law. She looked like someone waiting for a check to clear." After Claire left, I locked every door and closed every curtain. I retrieved the burner phone Marcus had given me, hidden inside a tampon box in the bathroom. Tyler would never think to look there. I turned on the shower for cover and called Marcus. His voice was tight with concern. "How are you holding up?" I wanted to claw her eyes out, I admitted, but I smiled and said thank you for the casserole. "I know how hard this is, but you are doing exactly what we need." I told him about Tyler searching the medicine cabinet, about the bottles being moved. Marcus went quiet. Then his voice came back, hard and worried. "They are already thinking about how to do it, how to make your death look natural." "Same playbook as Helen," I said. "We need to move faster than I thought. I am going to contact Detective Chen tonight. We need police protection ready to move the moment we have enough evidence. How much more do we need?" A confession. Something undeniable. Something that proves Jenna knew about Helen's murder before it happened. And if they try to kill me before we get it, they will not. They need you to sign over power of attorney first. They need legal access to the trust before you die, or everything goes to probate and they get nothing. So I am safe as long as I do not sign anything. Safe is a strong word. But yes, do not sign anything. Stall. Play confused. Play overwhelmed. Make them work for it. Evening fell. I sat in the dark living room, pretending to watch television while my mind raced through everything I had learned. I was about to go to bed when headlights swept across the window. A car pulled into my driveway. Jenna's silver Audi. I moved to the window, staying hidden behind the curtain. Jenna and Tyler were in the car, not getting out, just sitting there, talking. I remembered the listening device in my kitchen. If Tyler had planted bugs inside my house, maybe I could get close enough to hear them outside. I slipped out the back door and circled through the darkness. The October night was cold, my breath misting in the air. I crouched behind the hedges beside the driveway, just feet from Jenna's car. The windows were cracked open. They were smoking. Jenna always smoked when she was stressed. Tyler's voice drifted through the night air, impatient and sharp. She is perfect, completely falling apart. She does not suspect a thing. Are you sure? Jenna sounded uncertain. She seemed different. Something in her eyes. That is grief, babe. Trust me. She is broken. What about the documents? Did you find anything on Marcus's desk? Nothing useful. Either he did not keep files at home or someone cleaned them out. The landlord? That Collins guy? I am having him watched. So far, nothing suspicious. A pause. Then Jenna's voice again, harder now. How long until she signs? I will bring the papers next week. Tell her it is just to help manage her accounts during this difficult time. Standard stuff. And after she signs? Tyler's voice dropped, but I heard every word. Give it a month. Let things settle. Then we handle it the same way we handled the old woman. Quick, clean, natural causes. Jenna laughed, a cold, sharp sound that cut through the night like a blade. Poor Erin. She always was the trusting one. That is why this works. She will sign, she will smile, and by Christmas we will have everything. I pressed my hand over my mouth to keep from screaming. They were talking about my death like it was a business transaction, a line item on a spreadsheet. By Christmas, they would have everything, and I would be dead. The car started. Headlights swept across the yard. They drove away without ever knowing I was there. I crept back inside and stood in my dark kitchen, staring at the listening device Tyler had planted. They thought they were watching me. They thought I was weak and broken and alone. They had no idea that every word they had just spoken was burned into my memory. 1 month. They had given themselves 1 month to kill me. I intended to destroy them in half that time. The next morning I woke before dawn and began my counter-surveillance. Marcus had given me detailed instructions during our brief phone call, and I followed them exactly. 3 small recording devices, each no bigger than a shirt button, hidden in strategic locations throughout my house. 1 behind the mirror in the hallway, 1 inside the decorative vase on the bookshelf, 1 tucked beneath the lampshade in the living room. If Tyler was going to listen to me, I was going to listen right back. I moved through my house like a ghost, checking every corner, every shadow. The listening device Tyler had planted in my kitchen was still there, still recording, still transmitting my grief to whoever was monitoring it. I left it untouched. Let them think they had the upper hand. Let them think I was too broken to notice. By the time the sun rose, I had transformed my home into a trap. Every conversation that happened within these walls would be captured. Every lie, every threat, every slip of the tongue that might reveal the truth about what they had done to Helen. I was making coffee when my phone rang. Jenna's name flashed on the screen. "Good morning, sweetie." Her voice was warm and concerned. "How did you sleep?" "Not well," I let exhaustion color my words. "The house feels so empty." "That is exactly why I am calling. Tyler and I have been talking, and we think you should come stay with us for a while. You should not be alone right now." My heart rate spiked, but I kept my voice steady. "Stay with you? Just until you are feeling stronger. We have the spare bedroom all set up. You would have your own space, your own bathroom, and we would be right there if you needed anything." I understood immediately what this was. Not an invitation, a capture. If I moved into their house, I would be under constant surveillance. No way to contact Marcus, no way to gather evidence, no way to escape when they finally decided to make their move. "That is so sweet of you," I said carefully. "But I think I need to be here, in our home. I feel closer to Marcus here." A pause on the other end. I could almost hear Jenna recalculating. "Are you sure? It breaks my heart to think of you all alone in that big house." "I am sure. But thank you for offering. It means so much to know you care. We do care, Erin, more than you know. We are family." The word family hit me like a slap. Family. The same word Helen had used when confronting Jenna about the theft. The same word Tyler had corrupted and weaponized. I will come by later today, Jenna continued. Tyler has some paperwork he wants to show you. Just financial stuff. Nothing complicated. Of course, I will be here. I hung up and stared at the phone in my hand. They were accelerating the timeline. The power of attorney documents were coming today. They wanted me to sign away control of my finances, my assets, my life. I would not sign. But I had to make them believe I might. 3 hours later, Jenna and Tyler arrived with a folder full of documents and freshly baked muffins. The domesticity of it all made my stomach turn. Here they were, bringing comfort food while plotting my murder. Tyler spread the papers across my kitchen table with the practiced ease of a man who had done this many times before. He explained each document in simple terms, treating me like a child who needed help understanding basic concepts. This is a standard power of attorney, he said, pointing to the first form. It just gives me the ability to manage your accounts while you are going through this difficult time. Pay bills, handle investments, that sort of thing. I picked up the document and pretended to study it. The legal language was dense, but I understood enough to know what I was looking at. This was not limited power of attorney. This was full control. If I signed this, Tyler would have complete access to everything I owned. I do not know, I said slowly. This seems like a big step. It is actually very common, Tyler assured me, especially for widows dealing with complicated estates. You have enough to worry about without managing finances on top of everything else. Jenna put her hand on my arm. Marcus would want you to be taken care of, sweetie. He would want someone handling the business side so you can focus on healing. I looked at my sister's face, searching for any trace of the girl I had grown up with. The girl who used to braid my hair and tell me ghost stories. The girl who cried on my shoulder when our parents divorced and promised we would always have each other. That girl was gone. Maybe she had never really existed. Can I have some time to think about it? I asked. This is a lot to process. Tyler's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Of course, take a few days, but Aaron, there are deadlines, bills that need to be paid, investments that need attention. The longer you wait, the more complicated things become. I understand. I will look everything over carefully. They left an hour later, taking their muffins and their false concern with them. The power of attorney documents stayed on my kitchen table, unsigned, their presence a constant reminder of the danger I was in. That afternoon I sat in Marcus's chair in the living room and let memories wash over me. Not memories of Marcus, but memories of Jenna, our childhood, our sisterhood, the slow poison that had been building between us for decades. I was 10 years old the first time I realized Jenna saw me as competition rather than a companion. We were at Helen's house for Thanksgiving, and I had helped our grandmother make the pumpkin pie. When Helen praised my work at dinner, Jenna kicked me under the table so hard I had a bruise for a week. After that, I started noticing patterns. Whenever I succeeded at something, Jenna found a way to diminish it. When I won the spelling bee in 6th grade, she told everyone I had cheated. When I got accepted to college with a partial scholarship, she announced that she had decided not to go to college because she was too independent for institutional learning. For years I made excuses. Jenna was younger, Jenna had different strengths, Jenna just expressed love differently. I bent myself into knots trying to maintain our relationship, never acknowledging the fundamental truth that she resented my existence. Helen saw it. I remembered a conversation we had during my sophomore year of high school, sitting on her back porch watching fireflies. Your sister is jealous of you, Helen said without preamble. She has been since the day you were born. I was shocked. Jenna loves me. Helen smiled sadly. Love and jealousy are not mutually exclusive, child. Jenna loves you because you are her sister. But she envies you because you have something she does not. What could I possibly have that she does not? Peace, Helen said. You are comfortable in your own skin. You do not need external validation to feel worthy. Jenna will spend her whole life chasing approval, and she will hate anyone who seems to have found it without trying. I dismissed the conversation at the time. Helen was old. She did not understand modern sibling dynamics. Jenna and I would grow out of our rivalry and become close as adults. Except we never did. And now I understood that Helen had seen the truth I had been too blind to accept. Jenna's jealousy was not a phase. It was a cancer that had grown and metastasized until it consumed everything good in her. Tyler did not create the monster. He just gave it permission to feed. My phone buzzed, startling me out of my memories. A text from Claire. Need to talk. Important. Can you meet me at the coffee shop on Main Street in an hour? I texted back yes and started getting ready. Leaving the house was risky. Tyler might have people watching, but Claire had seemed genuinely concerned, and I needed allies. The coffee shop was nearly empty when I arrived. Claire sat in a back booth, looking nervous. She had a folder in front of her, and she kept glancing at the door. "Thank you for coming," she said as I slid into the seat across from her. "I did some research after we talked yesterday. I should not have, probably. But something about Tyler kept bothering me." "What did you find?" Claire opened the folder and slid a printout across the table. It was a news article from a paper in Ohio dated 7 years ago. The headline made my heart stop. "Investment advisor charged with fraud, settles before trial." The article detailed how a young financial advisor named Tyler James Brennan had been accused of misappropriating funds from several elderly clients. The charges were dropped when he agreed to pay restitution and surrender his license in the state of Ohio. "He was convicted," I whispered. "He has done this before." "Not convicted," Claire corrected. "He settled before it went to trial, paid off his victims, moved to Connecticut, and started over. It looks like he got his license reinstated here after a few years of working in a related field." I stared at the article, trying to process what I was seeing. Tyler was not just a murderer. He was a serial predator. He had targeted vulnerable elderly people before, stolen their money, and escaped consequences through legal maneuvering. And then he had found Jenna. Found the Whitmore family trust. Found his biggest score yet. "There is more," Claire said. She pulled out another sheet of paper. "I have a friend who works at Hartford Mutual. I asked her to check on Tyler's work history. She said he specifically requested to be assigned to accounts involving trusts and estates. He sought out elderly clients. He hunts them," I said. "That is what he does. He finds older people with money and no protection, and he takes everything they have." Claire nodded grimly. "Your grandmother was not his first victim, Aaron. She was just his biggest target." I thanked Claire and drove home in a daze. The pieces were falling into place, and the picture they formed was even more horrifying than I had imagined. Tyler was not just a man who had gotten greedy and made a terrible choice. He was a practiced predator, a professional thief who had refined his techniques over years. And Jenna had not been manipulated by a charming sociopath. She had willingly partnered with a known criminal because he offered her what she wanted most, a chance to finally win, a chance to take what she believed should have been hers all along. I was so lost in thought that I almost missed the envelope. It was sitting on my front porch, plain white, no return address. Just my name written in block letters across the front. Aaron McCall. I picked it up with trembling hands and tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a typed message. They already killed one person. You will be next if you do not stop asking questions. This is your only warning. I stood on my porch, the autumn wind cutting through my sweater, and read the message 3 times. Someone knew I was investigating, someone was watching, and that someone wanted me to know that my life was in danger. But instead of fear, I felt something else rising in my chest. Determination, fury, a cold, hard resolve that surprised even me. They were trying to scare me into submission, trying to make me back down like a good victim. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I walked into my house, tucked the threatening note into the folder with the rest of my evidence, and called Marcus on the burner phone. "They sent a warning," I said. "Anonymous note, telling me to stop asking questions. Are you okay?" "I am better than okay." "They are scared, Marcus. They would not be sending threats if they felt safe. We are getting close. Marcus was quiet for a moment. This is dangerous, Aaron. Maybe we should pull you out. Get you somewhere safe until the police can move. No, I will not run. I will not let them win by intimidating me into silence. This is not about winning or losing. This is about keeping you alive. Staying alive means finishing what we started. If I disappear now, they will know we are on to them. They will destroy evidence, cover their tracks, maybe disappear themselves. We have one chance to get them, Marcus. One chance to get justice for Helen. I am not throwing that away because they sent a scary letter. Another pause. Then Marcus's voice, soft with something that might have been pride. You are the bravest person I have ever known. I am just a woman who is tired of being afraid. Now tell me what comes next. We spent the next hour planning. Claire's discovery about Tyler's past in Ohio was significant. It established a pattern of behavior, made him less sympathetic to any future jury. Combined with the evidence Ruth had in Maine and the recordings we were gathering, we were building a case that would be hard to dismiss. But we still needed the confession. We still needed Jenna or Tyler to admit what they had done to Helen. And time was running out. That night, I lay in my bed and stared at the ceiling, listening to the silence of my empty house. Somewhere out there, Tyler and Jenna were plotting my death. Somewhere, corrupt officials were protecting them. Somewhere, my grandmother's murderers were sleeping peacefully while I fought for my life. But I was not alone. I had Marcus. I had Claire. I had Ruth hiding in Maine with evidence that could change everything. I had Detective Chen building a case in secret. And I had something they did not expect, something they had failed to calculate in their careful planning. I had nothing left to lose. They had taken my grandmother. They had tried to take my husband. They were trying to take my life. But in doing so, they had created something they could never have anticipated. A woman with absolutely no reason to hold back. A woman who would burn everything down to expose the truth. A woman who was done being the trusting one. Tomorrow, Tyler would push harder for my signature on those documents. Tomorrow, Jenna would smile and lie and pretend to be the sister I had always wanted. Tomorrow, I would play my part and wait for them to make a mistake. And when they did, I would be ready. 3 weeks of smiling at my sister while she planned my murder. I was starting to understand why people go insane. Every morning I woke up and put on my mask of grief. Every afternoon I welcomed Jenna and Tyler into my home and listened to their lies. Every night I collapsed into bed exhausted, wondering how much longer I could keep this up before something inside me shattered. The toll was visible now. I had lost 15 pounds since Marcus's funeral. Dark circles hung beneath my eyes like bruises. My hands trembled when I tried to pour coffee. All of this actually helped my performance. I looked exactly like what they expected to see. A widow falling apart. But inside, I was calculating, planning, waiting. I had recorded over 40 hours of conversations, but nothing definitive yet. Tyler was careful. He never directly mentioned Helen's murder. He never explicitly stated his plans for me. Every incriminating comment was wrapped in layers of plausible deniability. A good lawyer could explain away everything we had captured. Jenna was even worse. She deflected every conversation about the past, focusing relentlessly on moving forward, on helping me, on being the supportive sister I had always wanted. The performance was so convincing that sometimes I caught myself almost believing it. The power of attorney documents still sat unsigned on my kitchen table. I had been stalling with excuses for weeks now. First, I needed to consult a lawyer. Then I needed to understand the tax implications. Then I was too emotional to make important decisions. Each excuse bought me another few days, but I could feel their patience wearing thin. Last night, I dreamed of Helen. She stood in the kitchen of her house on Maple Street, wearing the blue apron she always wore when she baked. She looked at me with eyes full of love and sorrow. "Be patient, child," she said. "The truth always surfaces. Just do not drown before it does." I woke up crying. Real tears, not performed ones. I was not sure how much longer I could keep this up. Jenna arrived that morning alone, which was unusual. Tyler typically accompanied her on every visit, watching me with those calculating eyes. But today it was just my sister, standing on my porch with her tight smile and her designer handbag. "We need to talk about the paperwork, Erin," she said the moment she stepped inside. Her voice was different, harder. The sweetness she usually wrapped around her words was gone. The power of attorney? I played confused. I have been meaning to look at it, but everything has been so overwhelming. It has been 3 weeks. Jenna cut me off, something she had never done before. Tyler has been incredibly patient. But there are deadlines. Financial matters that need attention. I know. I am sorry. It is just that every time I look at those papers, I see Marcus's name, and I cannot bring myself to... I let tears well up, drawing on the reservoir of genuine grief that never seemed to empty. Jenna's expression flickered. Annoyance masked as sympathy. "I understand, sweetie, but Marcus would want you to be practical. He would not want you falling apart." The irony was staggering. Jenna lecturing me about what Marcus would want. Marcus, whose murder she had helped plan. Marcus, who was alive and listening to every word through the recording device hidden in my living room. "Give me until the end of the week," I said. "I promise I will sign everything." Jenna studied me for a long moment. Something calculating moved behind her eyes. "Fine, end of the week. But Erin, I am worried about you. You seem distant lately. Distracted." My heart pounded. Did she suspect something? "I am just tired. Grief is exhausting." Jenna nodded slowly, but her eyes never left my face. She knew something was wrong. She just could not figure out what. That afternoon, Tyler arrived alone. No casseroles this time, no pretense of family concern. He walked into my living room like he owned it and sat across from me without being invited. "Your sister tells me you are having trouble with the paperwork." His tone was different. The friendly mask was thinner now. The predator beneath was becoming more visible. "I just need more time." Tyler leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I am going to be honest with you, Erin. The financial situation is more complicated than you realize. Marcus left some irregularities, things that need to be cleaned up quickly." "What kind of irregularities?" Questions he was asking, people he was talking to. Tyler's eyes never blinked. It made certain parties nervous. "I do not understand. You do not need to understand." His voice hardened. "You just need to trust me. Sign the papers, let me handle the finances, and everything will be fine." "And if I do not?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Tyler's smile remained fixed, but his eyes went cold. "Bad things happen to people who make life difficult, Erin. Your grandmother learned that lesson." I felt ice spread through my veins. "Did he just say what I thought he said?" Tyler continued, his voice soft and dangerous. Helen was stubborn too, kept asking questions, digging into things that were none of her business. And then, tragically, she had that stroke. He shrugged, a casual gesture that made my blood boil. Life is fragile. Accidents happen. Health fails, especially when people do not know when to stop. I felt the recording device against my skin, capturing every word. It was not a confession, but it was close. An implicit admission that Helen's death was not natural. I needed to keep him talking. "Are you threatening me, Tyler?" He laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "Threatening? I am protecting you, protecting us. We are family now, Erin. Family looks out for each other. As long as everyone plays their part." He stood and straightened his jacket. "End of the week. Do not make me come back again." After he left, I locked myself in the bathroom and called Marcus on the burner phone. "That is huge," Marcus said after I recounted the conversation. "Helen was stubborn too. She had that stroke. That is practically an admission. It is not enough. A lawyer could argue he was just talking about her being difficult, that the stroke comment was coincidence. You are right. We need more. But Erin, we might have just gotten it." "What do you mean? Ruth contacted me this morning from Maine. She found something. My heart raced. What? A video. Helen recorded it on her phone 3 days before she died. Ruth had it backed up to a cloud account Tyler did not know about. What is on it? Marcus's voice was heavy. Helen. Looking straight at the camera. Naming Tyler Brennan as the person she believes is trying to kill her. My hands started shaking. Marcus played the recording over the phone, and I listened with tears streaming down my face. My name is Helen Whitmore. Helen's voice, frail but determined, filled my ear. I am 78 years old. If you are watching this, it means I am dead, and it probably was not natural causes, she continued. I have evidence that Tyler Brennan, my granddaughter Jenna's fiancé, has been stealing from the family trust. When I confronted him, he threatened me. He said accidents happen to old women who do not know when to keep quiet. Helen's voice broke. I am scared. I have changed my will. I have documented everything. But I do not know if it will be enough. If I die suddenly, a stroke, a fall, anything, please investigate Tyler Brennan. Please protect my granddaughter Erin. A pause. Then, so quietly, I almost missed it. And please do not let Jenna get away with this. She knows. God help me, my own granddaughter knows what Tyler is planning, and she is letting it happen. The video ended. I stood in my bathroom, sobbing silently, my grandmother's voice echoing in my ears. That is the proof, I said. That is everything. It is Helen's testimony, which is powerful, Marcus replied. But legally, it is hearsay. She did not witness her own murder. She suspected what would happen. A defense attorney could argue she was paranoid or confused. So what do we need? A confession. Jenna or Tyler admitting they killed Helen. Admitting they are planning to kill you. Something undeniable. The next day, I slipped away from my house under the pretense of grocery shopping. I drove 30 miles to a coffee shop in Hartford, far from anyone who might recognize me. Detective Laura Chen was waiting in a back booth. She was in her early 50s, sharp-featured, with the weary eyes of someone who had seen too much. She listened to my story without interrupting, then sat in silence for a full minute. When I investigated Helen Whitmore's death, something felt wrong, Chen finally said. The timeline was too neat. The medication change was suspicious. But my captain told me to close it. Natural causes, no evidence of foul play. Tyler's uncle, I said. The city councilman. Chen nodded. I could not prove the connection, but I knew. That is why I kept my own files. Unofficial. Off the record. She slid a folder across the table. Everything I gathered before I was shut down. I opened the folder with trembling hands. Medical records showing Helen's medication was changed without proper justification. Phone records showing calls between Tyler and Dr. Mercer in the weeks before Helen's death. Financial records showing a $200,000 payment to an offshore account 3 days after Helen died. I could not act on any of this, Chen explained. Chain of custody issues, my captain blocking me, Tyler's connections protecting him. But now I have Helen's video, your recordings, Ruth's testimony, and a pattern that is impossible to ignore. If we can get Jenna or Tyler to confess on tape, I can take this to the state attorney general. Bypass the local corruption entirely. How do we get that confession? Keep pushing, but be careful. These people have killed before. They will not hesitate to kill again. I returned home exhausted but energized. For the first time in weeks, I felt like we might actually win. Helen's video, Tyler's threat, Chen's evidence, the pieces were coming together. I just needed one more push. One moment where Jenna or Tyler said too much. That evening I noticed a car parked down the street. The same car I had seen 3 times this week. Tyler's people watching my movements. I waved at them cheerfully, playing the oblivious widow. Inside, my mind raced. They were getting impatient. They knew something was wrong. My phone buzzed. A text from Claire. Tyler came to the school today, asked the principal about your schedule, said he was concerned about your well-being. Principal told him everything. My stomach dropped. Tyler now knew exactly when I left for work, when I returned, what my routine was. He was preparing. The window was closing. I texted Marcus. Tyler is tracking my schedule. He visited my school. His response came quickly. How soon until end of week? 3 days. I am moving up the timeline. Ruth is coming down from Maine tomorrow with the original evidence. We need to force a confession in the next 48 hours. How? I have an idea, but you are not going to like it. Tell me. We let Jenna think she is winning. You sign the power of attorney. I stared at the phone. What? A fake one. Chen will prepare documents that look legitimate but are legally void. When Jenna and Tyler think they have won, they will let their guard down. That is when they will talk. Late that night, I was in the bathroom with the burner phone, water running for cover. Marcus and I were reviewing the plan in whispered voices. Are you sure about this? Signing fake documents feels dangerous. It is our best shot. Once they think they have won. The bathroom door flew open. Jenna stood in the doorway. She was not supposed to be here. She had a key now, I realized. When had she gotten a key? Her eyes went straight to the phone in my hand. Who are you talking to? My heart stopped. The water was still running. The phone was clearly not my regular one. I could not sleep. I was just... Jenna stepped into the bathroom, her face hardening. Give me the phone, Aaron. It is nothing, just a meditation app. You do not have a second phone for meditation apps. Her voice was ice. Who are you talking to? My mind raced. I could not let her see the call log, could not let her know about Marcus. It is nobody, just a grief counselor I have been calling privately. I did not want anyone to know. Jenna held out her hand. Then you will not mind if I check. Time slowed. I saw my options narrowing. If Jenna saw Marcus's number, everything fell apart. If she heard his voice still on the line, we were both dead. I made a split-second decision. I ended the call, deleted the call log, handed over the phone. Fine, check it. But you are being paranoid, Jenna. She scrolled through the phone. Contacts, call history, messages. Everything had been deleted. The phone looked clean. But Jenna was not satisfied. Where did you get this phone? I bought it after Marcus died. I wanted something private, something that did not remind me of him every time it rang. She studied me for a long moment, and I saw something new in her eyes. Suspicion. Calculation. The mask was slipping. You have changed, Aaron. These past few weeks, you are not the same. Grief changes people. Maybe. She handed back the phone. Or maybe grief is not the only thing going on here. She turned and walked out without another word. The front door slammed. Car engine started. Tires screeched. I stood alone in the bathroom, water still running, heart pounding so hard I could hear it over the spray. Jenna knew. She did not have proof, but she knew something was wrong. The game had just changed. Tomorrow I would have to convince my murderous sister that I was still her trusting, broken victim, and somehow I would have to get her to confess before she decided it was safer to just kill me tonight. Jenna moved into my house the next morning, and she brought everything except good intentions. I woke at 6 to the sound of the front door opening, keys jingling in a lock I had never given her permission to copy. By the time I stumbled downstairs in my bathrobe, she was already directing Tyler as he carried boxes through the entryway. 2 suitcases stood in the hallway. A garment bag hung over the banister. Tyler was hauling in what looked like a small electronics box, the kind that held routers and cables and devices I did not want to think about. Good morning, sweetie. Jenna's smile was warm. Her eyes were ice. I have been thinking all night, and I just cannot stand the thought of you alone in this big house. I am staying with you until you are back on your feet. My blood froze, but I forced gratitude into my voice. That is so sweet of you. But you really do not have to. Tyler cut me off without looking at me. Family takes care of family. Besides, Jenna has been worried sick about you since last night. Since she found me with the burner phone, since she realized something was wrong. I understood immediately what this was. Not an invitation. Not sisterly concern. This was a capture, a hostile takeover disguised as compassion. If Jenna moved into my house, I would be under constant surveillance. No privacy, no way to contact Marcus, no way to escape when they finally decided it was time. I watched Tyler carry the electronics box upstairs, and as he passed me, I caught a glimpse of what was inside: a baby monitor, a small camera. More listening devices. They were not even trying to hide it anymore. "Security cameras," Jenna said, catching my stare. "Tyler thinks we should have them installed. After Marcus's accident, you can never be too careful." The irony was suffocating. Installing cameras to protect the woman they were planning to kill. Over the next several hours, Tyler systematically dismantled every avenue of escape I had. First, my laptop. He offered to check it for viruses, said there had been reports of scams targeting widows. He took it into the guest room and did not bring it back for 2 hours. When he returned it, I knew without checking that monitoring software had been installed. Every keystroke I made would be visible to him now. Then my phone. He suggested consolidating our family phone plans to save money. Such a practical man, always thinking about finances. He took my regular phone to be updated and returned with a new device that I was certain contained tracking software. Then my car keys. They simply vanished from the hook by the front door. "I moved them somewhere safer," Jenna said when I asked. "You do not need to be driving in your condition. If you need to go anywhere, Tyler or I will take you." By noon, I had no private communication devices, no transportation, and no privacy. The burner phone was still hidden in the tampon box in my bathroom. They had not found it yet, but I could not risk using it with Jenna constantly hovering, constantly watching, constantly finding reasons to check on me. I was completely cut off. That evening, Tyler called a family meeting in my own living room. He sat across from me with documents spread on the coffee table, and all pretense of warmth had evaporated from his face. "We need to discuss the power of attorney, Aaron. It has been long enough." Jenna sat beside him, nodding along like a puppet. "We are just trying to help you, sweetie. You have been so overwhelmed." Tyler slid the documents toward me. "Sign these tonight. I have already set up a meeting with the trust administrator for Monday. We can get everything sorted out within a week." "Tonight?" My voice came out weaker than I intended. "I thought I had until the end of the week. Plans change." Tyler's eyes bore into mine. "You have been distracted lately. We need to move forward before you make any decisions you might regret." The meaning was clear. "Before you do anything that threatens us, I need to read through everything again." I stalled desperately. "I want to understand what I am signing." "You have had 3 weeks to read it." Tyler's jaw tightened with barely contained frustration. Jenna put a hand on his arm, a warning gesture. "Of course you should read it again. Take the evening." "But, Aaron," her voice hardened almost imperceptibly, "sign it before you go to bed tonight. Tyler and I have been very patient." I heard what she was not saying. Sign or else. After they retreated to the guest room, I sat alone with the documents in my lap and felt the walls closing in. The plan had been to receive fake power of attorney papers from Detective Chen, documents that looked legitimate but were legally void. I was supposed to sign those, make Tyler and Jenna think they had won, and wait for them to let their guard down. But communication had been cut before Chen could deliver the fake documents. If I signed tonight, I would be signing real power of attorney, giving Tyler complete legal control over my finances, my assets, my life. And if I refused, they might decide I was too much trouble to keep alive. I was trapped between compliance and death. At 10 o'clock, I excused myself to the bathroom. I locked the door, turned on the shower for cover, and retrieved the burner phone from its hiding spot with trembling hands. I typed a message to Marcus. Trapped. Jenna moved in. "They are forcing POA signature tonight. Need help." I waited. 1 minute, 2 minutes. The water drummed against the shower floor. Steam filled the small room. No response. I could not stay in here much longer without raising suspicion. Finally, 3 dots appeared. Marcus was typing. I know. Claire told me what happened. Ruth arrived this morning with evidence. Chen is ready. Can you stall until tomorrow morning? How? They are watching everything. Fake sick. Anything. We need 12 more hours. What happens in 12 hours? We are coming, all of us. The signing will happen, but on our terms. Trust me, Marcus explained quickly. Chen had prepared everything. The signing would be a setup. They would let Jenna and Tyler think they had won, but the room would be wired. Chen and backup officers would be in position. When Jenna and Tyler dropped their guard, when they finally said something incriminating, the trap would spring shut. What if they do not confess? What if they are too careful? Then we provoke them. You will mention something only Helen's killer would know. Something Ruth told us. What if it does not work? Then I walk in. And when they see me alive, they will either confess or make a move. Either way, we will have them. Fear gripped my chest. Marcus, if you reveal yourself before they confess, they could claim you faked your death to frame them. It could backfire. I know the risks. But I am not letting you face them alone anymore. Tomorrow morning. Hold on until then. A knock on the bathroom door made me jump. Aaron? Jenna's voice suspicious. You have been in there a while. Everything okay? I hid the phone, flushed the toilet, ran the sink. Fine. Just feeling a little nauseous. Be out in a minute. I typed one final message. Tomorrow. I will be ready. Then I deleted everything and hid the phone again. I emerged from the bathroom, pressing a hand to my stomach, letting my face go pale. I did not have to fake the trembling. That was real enough. I think I am getting sick, I said. My stomach is doing flips. Jenna studied me with narrowed eyes. Sick? You seemed fine an hour ago. It comes and goes. Maybe it is stress, or something I ate. Tyler appeared in the hallway behind her, arms crossed. You can still sign documents with an upset stomach. I can barely stand up straight. I let myself stagger slightly, caught myself on the doorframe. Please, just give me tonight. I will sign first thing in the morning. The performance drew on real exhaustion, real fear, real desperation. I watched Jenna and Tyler exchange one of their silent looks, that wordless communication between co-conspirators. Fine, Jenna finally said, first thing in the morning. But Aaron, I mean it. No more delays. I retreated to my bedroom and collapsed on the bed. 12 hours. I just had to survive 12 hours. Sleep was impossible. I lay awake listening to Jenna and Tyler move around my house, their footsteps creaking on the floorboards, their voices murmuring in low tones I could not quite make out. Once, I heard footsteps stop outside my bedroom door. Someone standing there listening, checking if I was asleep. I forced my breathing to stay slow and even, feigning rest. The hours crawled by like years. While I lay trapped in my own home, things were happening across town that I would not learn about until later. Ruth Gonzalez had arrived from Maine at 7 that morning, carrying a metal lockbox that contained everything we needed to bring Tyler down. She met Marcus, Edward, and Detective Chen at the Vermont cabin, and she brought evidence that made even the veteran detective go pale. Helen's original medication bottles, the ones from before Dr. Mercer switched them, preserved exactly as they had been 6 months ago. A handwritten letter from Helen explaining her suspicions dated 3 days before her death. Photographs of documents from Helen's home office that had mysteriously disappeared after the funeral. And most damning of all, a thumb drive containing a recording of Tyler's voice, captured on Helen's phone during their final confrontation. Tyler's voice on the recording was cold and menacing. If you do not change the will back, I will make sure you regret it. Old women fall downstairs all the time. Old women have heart attacks in their sleep. Choose wisely, Helen. Detective Chen reviewed everything with grim satisfaction. This is enough for an arrest warrant. But for a murder conviction, we still need them to incriminate themselves about what they actually did, not just what they threatened. That is why the signing has to happen, Marcus said. They think they have won. They will get careless." Ruth's voice shook with emotion. "Mrs. Helen trusted me. She made me promise to keep these safe until the time was right. I think the time is right." Edward put a hand on her shoulder. "We are going to get justice for her, Ruth. I promise." They spent the night preparing. Chen coordinated with state police because local Ashford police could not be trusted. Undercover officers would pose as the notary and legal assistants at the signing. Every inch of that room would be wired. Marcus would be watching via live feed from a vehicle nearby. If things went wrong, he was prepared to walk in and blow his cover to save me. At 5:47 in the morning, I heard movement in the hallway outside my bedroom. Jenna was already awake. A soft knock. "Aaron, time to get ready. We are leaving for the signing at 8. I showered and dressed carefully, choosing professional but subdued clothing. The recording device, freshly charged, was hidden in the lining of my bra. A second recorder, backup, was sewn into the hem of my jacket. I applied makeup to cover the dark circles, to look composed, to look compliant. In the mirror, I barely recognized myself. 3 weeks ago, I was a grieving widow. Now I was a weapon aimed directly at my sister's heart. I walked downstairs to find Tyler on his phone, speaking in low tones near the kitchen window. He did not see me standing at the top of the stairs. "Everything is set," he said. "She will sign this morning. By noon, we will have full control." A pause while the person on the other end spoke. "Once the paperwork clears, we wait a few weeks. Let things settle. Then we handle her the same way we handled the grandmother. Mercer is on standby." My blood turned to ice. Dr. Mercer, the doctor who killed Helen, he was ready to kill me too. Tyler turned and saw me on the stairs. His face went perfectly blank, revealing nothing of the monster beneath. "Morning, Aaron. Ready for today?" I descended the stairs, each step measured, controlled, hiding the terror behind a mask of exhaustion. "Ready. Let us get this over with." Tyler drove. Jenna sat in the back with me, making small talk about nothing. The weather, a restaurant she wanted to try, a show she had been watching. Normal conversation between sisters, as if she was not taking me to sign away my life. I responded on autopilot, my mind elsewhere. Somewhere behind us, I hoped Marcus was following. Somewhere ahead, I prayed Detective Chen was waiting. We pulled into the parking lot of a gray office building in downtown Hartford, and I felt the world narrow to a single point. Everything I had endured, the fake funeral, the grief, the 3 weeks of smiling at my sister while she planned my death, it all came down to the next hour. I touched the recording device through my shirt, felt its reassuring presence against my heart. One way or another, this ended today. Either I would walk out of that building with a confession, or I would not walk out at all. I opened the car door and stepped into the cold November air. Jenna took my arm, sisterly and solicitous. Tyler walked ahead, checking his phone, already counting his stolen millions. They had no idea what was waiting for them inside, and I intended to keep it that way until the very last moment. The law office of Henderson and Associates occupied the 14th floor of a glass tower in downtown Hartford, and walking through those doors felt like stepping into my own execution chamber. The reception area was all polished marble and leather chairs, fresh flowers on every surface, the smell of expensive coffee drifting from somewhere unseen. Everything designed to project legitimacy and trustworthiness, everything a lie. A receptionist greeted us with a professional smile. "The McCall party? Mr. Henderson is ready for you." I studied her face as she led us down the hallway. Younger than I expected, with alert eyes that seemed to take in everything without appearing to look at anything. I wondered if she was one of Detective Chen's undercover officers. I had no way to know. I was not supposed to know the details. Plausible deniability, Marcus had called it. We were shown into a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Hartford skyline. A long mahogany table dominated the space. 8 leather chairs arranged around it, documents already spread across the polished surface. A man in his 60s rose to greet us. William Henderson, attorney at law, according to the nameplate on the door. His handshake was firm, his smile practiced. Mrs. McCall, my condolences on your loss. Please have a seat. We will try to make this as painless as possible. I searched his face for any sign that he was part of the trap. Nothing. Either he was an excellent actor or he was exactly what he appeared to be, a real attorney unknowingly participating in the takedown of 2 murderers. 2 other people waited in the room. A woman in her 50s with reading glasses perched on her nose, introduced as the notary public. A man in his 30s with an athletic build, introduced as a legal assistant. I noticed the assistant's jacket fit oddly, a slight bulge at his hip. A gun, maybe. Or maybe I was seeing threats everywhere. I touched the recording device hidden against my chest and took my seat. Please have a seat, Henderson said, gesturing to the chairs. Let us begin. We settled around the table, Aaron on one side, Jenna and Tyler on the other. Like opposing armies meeting for a treaty signing that both sides knew would be broken. Henderson began explaining the documents in his measured, professional voice. Power of attorney. Financial management authorization. Trust access forms. Each one designed to transfer control of my life into Tyler's hands. I picked up the first page and pretended to read it carefully. The plan was to stall, ask questions, wait for them to get frustrated enough to make a mistake. I have a question about this section, I said, pointing to a paragraph about asset management. Henderson explained. I nodded thoughtfully and asked another question, then another. 20 minutes passed. I had signed nothing. Tyler's patience cracked first. Aaron, we have been over all of this, multiple times. Just sign the documents. I want to make sure I understand what I am agreeing to. I kept my voice meek, confused. This is my entire financial future. Jenna's smile tightened. We know, sweetie. That is why we are here to help. But you are making this much more complicated than it needs to be. I looked at my sister, really looked at her. The mask she had worn for weeks was thinner than ever. Frustration leaked through the cracks. Impatience made her jaw tight and her eyes hard. Good. Impatient people make mistakes. I set down the pen and folded my hands on the table. Actually, before I sign anything, I need to ask you both something. Tyler and Jenna exchanged a glance. That silent communication between co-conspirators. What now? Tyler's voice carried an edge. I took a breath. I need to ask you about Grandma Helen. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Jenna's face went blank. Tyler's eyes narrowed to slits. What about her? Jenna asked carefully. I have been thinking about how she died. The stroke, the timing of everything. Silence. Henderson looked confused. The notary and legal assistant were motionless, watching. Your grandmother was elderly, Tyler said. His voice was controlled but tight. She had health problems. It was sad but not unexpected. Was it, though? I let my voice sharpen slightly. Because I have been doing some research. Jenna's hands clenched on the table. Research? What kind of research? The kind that raises questions. I held Tyler's gaze. Like why her medication was changed 6 weeks before she died. Like why the doctor who changed it received $200,000 right after her funeral. Tyler's composure cracked. Just for a second, but I saw it. A flash of something that might have been fear. Where did you hear that? His voice was sharp now, all pretense of friendliness gone. Does it matter? The point is, I heard it. And I have been wondering, did Grandma Helen really die of natural causes? Aaron, what are you implying? Jenna's voice rose. That is insane. Is it? I turned to face my sister directly. Because I also found out that Grandma changed her will right before she died. Changed it so I got more than you, Jenna. And then, conveniently, she died before she could change it again. Jenna stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor with a screech. I do not have to listen to this. Tyler grabbed her arm with a controlling grip. Jenna, sit down. He turned to me, his voice dangerously calm. I do not know where you are getting this information, but you need to stop, right now. Or what? I let the words hang in the air. Something bad will happen to me, like it happened to Helen? Enough. Tyler slammed his palm on the table. Everyone jumped. Henderson looked alarmed. The notary and assistant tensed but did not move. Tyler caught himself, forced his voice back to something resembling calm. Aaron, you are clearly not in the right state of mind to make financial decisions. Maybe we should postpone this. No. I shook my head. I want to finish this conversation. I want to know the truth. I looked directly at Jenna. Did you know, Jenna? Did you know what Tyler was planning for our grandmother? My sister's face was white as paper. Her mouth opened and closed. No words came out. That silence was more damning than any confession. How do you know about the texts? Jenna's voice was barely a whisper. Tyler, how does she know about the texts? Shut up, Jenna. Tyler's command was sharp as a knife. But Jenna was unraveling now, weeks of tension and guilt spilling out. You said no one would ever find out. You said it was untraceable. How does she know? I said, shut up, Tyler roared. The legal assistant stepped forward slightly. The notary had her hand near her purse. I pressed harder. Jenna, please, I need to hear you say it. Did you know Tyler was going to kill our grandmother? My sister was crying now. Real tears. Ugly tears. Snot running down her face, mascara streaking her cheeks. The composed, calculating woman I had been living with for 3 weeks was gone. In her place was something broken and desperate. I did not want to, she sobbed. You do not understand what it was like. She was going to cut me out of everything. Everything that should have been mine. Jenna, stop talking. Right now. Tyler's voice was dangerous, but Jenna was beyond hearing him. She always loved you more, Aaron. Always. And when she changed the will, when she told me I would only get 30% because I was not trustworthy, I could not let her do that to me. Tyler moved toward Jenna, trying to silence her physically now. But I was faster. What did you do, Jenna? Say it. The words exploded out of her like they had been trapped for months, desperate to escape. We killed her, okay? Is that what you want to hear? Tyler switched her medication and I knew about it and I did not stop him. She was supposed to die in her sleep, but she suffered, and I had to watch, and I have been living with it ever since. Silence. Absolute, devastating silence. Tyler's face was a mask of fury. You stupid, stupid woman, you just... He stopped, looked around the room, at Henderson, frozen in shock, at the notary, who was no longer pretending to look at paperwork, at the assistant, whose hand was now clearly on his weapon. Understanding dawned in his eyes. This is a setup. Everything happened at once. The legal assistant drew his weapon. Hartford police. Nobody move. The notary was on her feet, badge in hand. Tyler Brennan, Jenna Dawson, you are under arrest for the murder of Helen Whitmore. Henderson dropped to the floor and crawled under the table. Apparently he had been a real attorney after all. The door burst open. 2 more officers, guns drawn, flooding into the room. But Tyler moved faster than anyone expected. He grabbed Jenna and shoved her toward the officers. A human shield, a distraction. In the chaos, while everyone was focused on my screaming sister, he lunged across the table. His hand closed around my wrist with crushing force. He yanked me toward him before I could react. Cold metal pressed against my temple. Everybody back. Tyler's voice was barely recognizable. The smooth, charming man I had known was gone. In his place was something feral and desperate. Or I swear to God I will kill her right here. The room froze. Officers had guns raised but could not shoot. I was in the way, Tyler's arm locked around my throat, the gun barrel digging into my skull. Jenna was on the floor, sobbing, being handcuffed by 2 officers who kept their eyes on Tyler. This is how it is going to work, Tyler said. I am walking out of here with her. Anyone follows, she dies. I could feel his heart pounding against my back, racing. Desperate. The gun was cold against my temple. This was not part of the plan. I was supposed to get a confession and walk away. Instead, I was a hostage, a bargaining chip in a killer's escape. Tyler dragged me toward the door, keeping the officers in front of him. The lead officer spoke calmly. "Mr. Brennan, let us talk about this. There is no way out of this building that does not go through us. Then you better clear a path, because I have got nothing to lose." He was right. He had just heard his fiancée confess to murder. He was going to prison for life. What was one more body at this point? He backed us into the hallway. Officers followed at a distance, weapons raised, waiting for an opportunity that was not coming. The elevator dinged. Doors slid open. "Get in," Tyler commanded. "Just you and me, Aaron. Anyone else gets in, she dies." He shoved me inside and jammed the close door button. The doors slid shut, cutting us off from the officers, from help, from hope. We were alone, descending. Tyler was breathing hard, sweat dripping down his face. The polished, controlled man I had met at Jenna's engagement party was completely gone. "You think you are so clever," he hissed in my ear. "You think you won. But I am not going to prison, not ever." "Tyler, please, this does not have to end like this." He laughed. A terrible sound. "It ended the moment your grandmother decided to play favorites. It ended when Marcus started snooping. And it ends when I walk out of this building and disappear." "And what about me?" Tyler's voice was ice. "You are my insurance until I am clear. After that..." He did not finish the sentence. He did not have to. The elevator reached the lobby. Doors opened. Tyler pulled me out, gun still at my head. The lobby was chaos. People screaming, running, security guards shouting into radios. Through the glass front doors, I could see police cars, lights flashing, officers taking positions. And then, walking through the front entrance of the building, calm as a man taking a Sunday stroll, came Marcus McCall. Alive. Whole, looking directly at Tyler with an expression that could freeze fire. Tyler stopped dead. His grip on me loosened just slightly. "No," he whispered. "No, you are dead." I saw the accident. I saw the body. Marcus kept walking toward us, hands raised, voice steady. "You saw what I wanted you to see, just like you showed Helen what you wanted her to see, just like you showed everyone. Stay back." Tyler's gun hand was shaking now. "I will kill her. I swear I will." "No, you will not. Because if you pull that trigger, you have nothing left. No hostage, no leverage, no escape." Marcus took another step. "Let my wife go, Tyler. It is over." Tyler was coming apart. The man who had planned everything, who had controlled everything, was watching his world crumble. "You were supposed to be dead." His voice cracked. "I planned everything. The accident, the body, everything. You planned to kill me, and you failed, just like you are going to fail now. I will not go to prison." His attention was fully on Marcus. Rage, fear, disbelief. His grip on me loosened just enough. I remembered the self-defense move Marcus had taught me years ago. I drove my elbow back into Tyler's solar plexus with everything I had. He doubled over, gun arm swinging wild. I dropped, rolled away. A shot rang out. Not Tyler's gun. A police sniper positioned on the building across the street. Tyler crumpled to the marble floor, weapon clattering away, clutching his shoulder and screaming. Officers swarmed in, pinning him down, cuffing him. It was over. Marcus ran to me, pulled me into his arms. I was shaking, crying, laughing, all at once. "You are alive," I said into his chest. "You are really alive. I told you I would come back." He held me tight. "I told you I would not let them hurt you." Behind us, Tyler was screaming as they dragged him away. "She is the one. Jenna is the one who did it. I will testify. I will tell you everything." But no one was listening anymore. I pulled back, looked up at Marcus, touched his face to make sure he was real. "Helen is watching," I said quietly. "Somewhere she is watching." Marcus kissed my forehead. "Then let us make sure she sees us finish this." They led me outside into the cold November air, past the police cars and the crime scene tape and the gathered crowd trying to understand what had just happened. Somewhere in that building, Jenna was being read her rights. Somewhere behind us, Tyler was bleeding and screaming and bargaining for a deal he would never get. And somewhere above it all, I liked to think my grandmother was finally at peace, knowing that the people who killed her would spend the rest of their lives paying for it. But as I leaned against my not-so-dead husband and watched the chaos unfold, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. This was not the ending. This was just the beginning of justice finally being served. The next hour passed in fragments, like a film reel with missing frames. Police lights strobing red and blue across the Hartford skyline, shouting voices and radio static. Marcus's hand gripping mine so tight it almost hurt, and the beautiful, terrible sound of my sister screaming as they loaded her into a patrol car. I sat on the bumper of an ambulance, wrapped in a shock blanket I did not remember receiving. EMTs had checked my vitals, elevated heart rate, mild bruising on my throat where Tyler's arm had crushed against my windpipe, but otherwise unharmed, physically at least. Marcus sat beside me close enough that our shoulders touched. Neither of us spoke. There was too much to say and no words that could hold it all. Across the parking lot, Tyler was being loaded into a separate ambulance under armed guard. His shoulder wound was being treated, but the screaming had not stopped. He was still bargaining, still threatening, still insisting that Jenna was the real mastermind, and he was just following orders. Nobody was listening. I watched them close the ambulance doors on him and felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not relief. Just a hollow emptiness where rage used to live. Then I saw Jenna. She was sitting in the back of a police cruiser, hands cuffed behind her, face streaked with ruined makeup. She was not screaming anymore. She was not crying. She was just sitting there, staring at nothing, like someone had reached inside her and turned off all the lights. I caught her eye through the window. For one moment, my sister looked at me, really looked at me. And in that moment, I searched for something familiar. The girl who used to braid my hair, the teenager who stayed up late with me watching horror movies, the woman who had stood beside me at our grandmother's funeral and wept. But there was nothing there. Just emptiness. Just a stranger wearing my sister's face. Then Jenna turned away and something inside me broke. Not into pieces, but into a new shape. A shape that could hold this grief without being destroyed by it. I buried my face in Marcus's chest and let myself cry. Detective Chen found us 20 minutes later. She looked exhausted but satisfied, like a hunter who had finally caught prey she had been tracking for years. Mrs. McCall. Mr. McCall. She nodded to each of us in turn. We need to talk. We followed her to a quieter corner of the parking lot, away from the media cameras that had already begun to gather. While you were in the signing, we executed arrest warrants simultaneously at 3 locations, Chen said. Her voice was businesslike, but I could hear the triumph underneath. Mercer? Marcus asked. Chen nodded. Dr. Nathan Mercer was arrested at his home in Glastonbury 40 minutes ago. He is already talking. Talking, I repeated, singing like a canary. The moment he heard Tyler was in custody, he started bargaining. He has given us everything. The medication switch, the payment, how Tyler approached him, how they planned to make Helen's death look natural. I felt the world tilt beneath me. So it is really over? We have proof, we have confessions, physical evidence, financial records, and witness testimony. Your grandmother's death will be officially reclassified as homicide by end of day. Homicide. The word I had known was true but had never heard spoken officially. Helen did not die of natural causes. She was murdered. And now, finally, the world would know. What about Jenna? My voice came out as barely a whisper. Chen's expression softened slightly. Your sister is facing charges of conspiracy to commit murder, accessory to murder and fraud. The confession she made in that room, there is no coming back from that. How long? If convicted? 15 to 25 years. possibly more depending on what else the investigation uncovers. I did the math in my head. Jenna was 32. She could be nearly 60 when she got out, if she got out at all. I should have felt something. Satisfaction that justice was being served, relief that the nightmare was ending. But all I felt was tired, bone-deep, exhausted in a way that sleep could never fix. They took us to Hartford Police Headquarters for formal statements. The building was buzzing with activity. This was the biggest case the department had seen in years, and everyone wanted a piece of it. Marcus and I were separated for individual interviews. Being apart from him, even for just a few hours, made my chest tight with anxiety. I had spent 3 weeks pretending he was dead. Now that I had him back, I could not bear to let him out of my sight. A female detective led me to a small interview room and took me through everything from the beginning. The funeral, Edward's phone call, discovering Marcus was alive. The 3 weeks of playing the grieving widow while gathering evidence. I told her about the recordings, the listening devices, Tyler's threats, Jenna's slip-ups. Every moment of fear and rage and desperate hope that had led to this day. When I finished, the detective looked at me with something like awe. "Mrs. McCall, what you did was incredibly brave and incredibly dangerous. I did not have a choice. They killed my grandmother. They were going to kill me. Most people would have run, would have gone to police and hoped for the best. Running would not have gotten justice for Helen, and hoping is not a strategy." After my interview, I found myself asking the question that had been nagging at me since Tyler was taken down. Is Marcus in trouble for faking his death? The detective hesitated. That is complicated. Technically, filing a false death certificate is a crime. But given the circumstances, the imminent threat to his life, the fact that he was cooperating with law enforcement to expose murderers, the DA is inclined to be lenient. Inclined? Off the record? The detective almost smiled. No prosecutor in their right mind is going to charge a man who faked his death to catch his wife's would-be murderers. The optics alone would be a nightmare. Relief flooded through me. One less thing to worry about. It was late afternoon when they finally released us. Edward Collins was waiting outside with his car, patient as always. The drive home was silent. There was too much to say and no way to say it. When we pulled into the driveway of our house, I just sat there for a moment, staring at the yellow siding and the red door and the maple tree Marcus had planted the year we moved in. The house looked the same, but everything was different now. Jenna's cameras were still inside, her suitcases were still in the guest room. The power of attorney documents were probably still on the kitchen table. "I do not know if I can go in there," I admitted. Marcus took my hand. "We do not have to. We can go to Edward's. We can go anywhere." But I shook my head. "No, this is our home. I am not letting them take that from me too." Inside, everything was exactly as we had left it that morning. Dishes in the sink, Jenna's coffee mug on the counter, the documents spread across the kitchen table like a trap waiting to be sprung. I walked through each room slowly, reclaiming the space. In the living room, I found the first listening device Tyler had planted and ripped it from its hiding spot behind the fruit bowl. Marcus found 2 more in the bedroom. We searched every corner, every shadow, until we were certain the house was clean. When we finished, the house felt different. Lighter. Like we had exorcised a ghost. We ended up in our bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed, finally alone for the first time since that moment in Edward's office when I had discovered my husband was alive. "I am sorry," Marcus said, "for all of it, for lying to you, for making you grieve. Do not apologize." I took his hand. "You saved my life. I put you through hell first. We went through hell together, and we came out the other side." I leaned against him, exhausted, drained, but somehow whole. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we wait for the trial. We testify. We watch them go to prison. And then?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "And then we figure out how to live again." That evening, Ruth Gonzalez and Edward Collins came to the house. It was the first time I had met Ruth in person. She was small, gray-haired, with kind eyes that had seen too much. She brought one final gift, a letter from Helen. "Mrs. Helen gave this to me the day before she died," Ruth said, her voice trembling. "She told me to give it to you only if the worst happened." I took the envelope with shaking hands. My name was written on the front in Helen's elegant script. The handwriting I had known my whole life, the handwriting I would never see again. I opened it and read aloud. "My dearest Erin, if you are reading this, then I am gone, and things have happened the way I feared they would. I want you to know that I am not afraid of death. I have lived a good life, loved deeply, and been loved in return. What I fear is leaving you unprotected. I have done everything I can to prepare. The documents, the evidence, the people I have trusted with pieces of the truth. But in the end, the thing that matters most is not money or proof or legal protection. It is you, your strength, your courage, your good heart. I changed my will not because I loved you more than Jenna, but because I trusted you more. Because I knew that you would use this inheritance to do good, not just for yourself, but for others. Take care of our family's legacy, Erin, and if Jenna was involved in my death, know that I forgive her. I do not expect you to forgive her. That is your choice to make. But I choose to remember her as the little girl who used to pick wildflowers for me, not as whatever she became. I love you forever. Grandma Helen." By the time I finished reading, everyone in the room was crying. Marcus, Edward, Ruth, me. "Mrs. Helen was a good woman," Ruth said quietly, "the best I ever knew." I folded the letter carefully and pressed it against my heart. We are going to honor her. Everything she built, everything she believed in. We are going to make sure it matters. The next morning, the story exploded across national news. Connecticut man fakes death to expose wife's killers. Sister arrested for grandmother's murder. Trust fund tragedy ends in multiple arrests. The headlines were everywhere. The phone would not stop ringing. Journalists, television producers, old friends who had seen the news and wanted details. I turned off my phone and let the world spin without me. I watched the news coverage with a strange sense of detachment. They were showing photographs of Jenna, her mugshot, but also old family photos that someone had leaked to the press. Jenna at Christmas, Jenna at her college graduation, Jenna and me as children, holding hands and smiling at the camera. The commentators dissected our family like a case study. Sibling rivalry turned deadly. Inheritance disputes lead to murder. The American family's dark side exposed. I turned off the television. "They are turning it into entertainment," I said. Marcus put his arm around me. "Let them. The only story that matters is the one told in court." The district attorney called that afternoon. He wanted to meet with us personally. The case was being fast-tracked, too high profile to let languish. "Your testimony will be crucial," he told us. "Yours and your husband's. Are you prepared for what that means?" "It means sitting in a courtroom and telling strangers how my sister helped murder my grandmother, how her fiancé held a gun to my head. It means reliving the worst moments of your life in public. Defense attorneys will try to break you. They will attack your credibility, your marriage, your relationship with your sister." I met his eyes without flinching. "I spent 3 weeks smiling at murderers. I think I can handle lawyers." 1 week later, I made a decision that I knew might be a mistake. I asked to visit Jenna in prison. The women's correctional facility was 40 minutes from Ashford. Gray walls, fluorescent lights, the smell of industrial cleaner, and despair. I waited in the visiting room on a plastic chair, staring at the wire mesh barrier that would separate me from my sister. When they brought Jenna in, I barely recognized her. She had aged 10 years in 1 week. No makeup, hair unwashed and hanging limp, eyes hollow and empty. She sat down across from me and said nothing. "Why are you here?" she finally asked. "I do not know. I needed to see you, to understand." Jenna laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "Understand what? That I am a monster? That I helped kill our grandmother for money? I need to understand how. How you became this person. The Jenna I knew would never... The Jenna you knew was a lie. My sister cut me off, her voice hard. She was always a lie. The good sister, the supportive one. I was drowning in jealousy my whole life, Aaron. You just never bothered to notice. So, this is my fault? No, this is my fault. But you do not get to be innocent either. You walked through life being loved, being chosen, being special, and you never once thought about what that left for me. I stared at my sister, searching for something. Remorse, guilt, the person she used to be. Do you regret it? I asked quietly. Any of it? Jenna was silent for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was flat and dead. I regret getting caught. I regret trusting Tyler. I regret that Grandma suffered. That was not supposed to happen. But do you regret killing her? Jenna met my eyes, and in that moment I saw the truth. She was going to give you everything, everything that should have been shared, everything that should have been mine. So no, Aaron. I do not regret wanting what I deserved. I just regret that you got in the way. I stood. My legs were shaking, but my voice was steady. Goodbye, Jenna. I walked toward the door. Aaron! Her voice followed me. Aaron, wait. I did not mean it. I am sorry. Aaron. But I kept walking, through the doors, into the cold November air, into a future without my sister. I drove home with Jenna's words echoing in my skull. I do not regret wanting what I deserved. And I finally understood something I should have seen years ago. My sister did not become a monster because of Tyler. She had always been capable of this. Tyler just gave her permission. As I pulled into our driveway and saw Marcus waiting on the porch, I made a decision. I would testify. I would tell the truth. And I would never let myself feel guilty for being loved, for being chosen, for being someone my grandmother trusted. Jenna made her choices. Now she would live with them, and so would I. The Hartford Superior Courthouse was built in 1892, and standing on its marble steps that cold February morning, I could not help thinking that the building had witnessed over a century of families torn apart. Today, it would witness mine. 4 months had passed since the arrest. 4 months of depositions, hearings, motions, and delays. 4 months of reliving the worst moments of my life for lawyers and judges and court reporters who typed every word with clinical detachment. The trial itself had lasted 3 weeks. Testimony from dozens of witnesses. Evidence presented in meticulous detail. The entire ugly truth laid bare for 12 strangers to judge. I had testified for 2 full days, Marcus for 1, Ruth Gonzalez for half a day, her voice shaking but her words clear. Dr. Mercer had turned state's witness in exchange for reduced charges, and his testimony was devastating. He described in clinical detail how Tyler had approached him, how they had planned the medication switch, how they had calculated exactly how long it would take for Helen's heart to fail. Tyler had tried to cut a similar deal, but it was too late. The district attorney was not interested in bargaining with the man who had held a gun to my head. Now it was Judgment Day. Marcus and I arrived at the courthouse surrounded by a swarm of media. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. I kept my eyes forward and let Marcus guide me through the chaos. Detective Chen met us at a side entrance and escorted us inside. The courtroom was packed, family members I barely recognized, media representatives with their notebooks and recorders, curious spectators who had followed the case on the news and wanted to see how the story ended. I took my seat behind the prosecution table and forced myself to look across the aisle. Tyler sat at the defense table, thinner than I remembered, his expensive suit hanging loose on his frame. His eyes were hollow, empty of the charm and confidence that had fooled so many people. He did not look at me. At a separate table wearing prison orange sat Jenna. My sister had not looked at me once during the entire trial. Not during my testimony. Not during the closing arguments. Not even now, as we waited for the verdict that would determine the rest of her life. The bailiff called the court to order. Judge Margaret Harrison entered, and we all rose. All rise for the Honorable Judge Harrison. She took her seat and surveyed the courtroom with stern eyes. Has the jury reached a verdict in the matter of the state of Connecticut versus Tyler James Brennan? The foreperson stood, a middle-aged woman with silver hair and a face that revealed nothing. We have, Your Honor. The charges were read one by one. Murder in the first degree in the death of Helen Whitmore. The foreperson's voice was steady. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. The word echoed through the courtroom like a gunshot. Guilty. Attempted murder in the case of Marcus McCall. Guilty. Conspiracy to commit murder in the planned killing of Aaron McCall. Guilty. Financial fraud, elder abuse, witness intimidation. Obstruction of justice. Guilty, 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 guilty. Each word landed like a hammer blow, driving nails into the coffin of Tyler Brennan's freedom. I watched his face as the verdicts were read. His composure cracked with the first guilty, shattered completely by the third. His lawyer grabbed his arm to steady him as the color drained from his face. For one brief moment, something that might have been pity flickered in my chest. Then I remembered the gun pressed to my temple. Helen dying alone and afraid. The casual way Tyler had discussed killing me like I was nothing more than an obstacle to be removed. The pity evaporated. Tyler turned in his seat, scanning the courtroom wildly, looking for something or someone. His eyes landed on Jenna. This is your fault. His voice rose to a scream. You confessed. You ruined everything. Guards moved to restrain him as he lunged toward the barrier separating him from the gallery. I should have killed you both when I had the chance. You and your whole worthless family. Order. Judge Harrison banged her gavel. Remove the defendant. They dragged Tyler out of the courtroom, still screaming, still blaming everyone but himself for the destruction he had caused. The doors closed behind him, cutting off his voice mid-curse. The courtroom settled. Now it was Jenna's turn. My sister sat perfectly still, hands folded on the table in front of her, face blank as a mask. The sweet, supportive sister persona she had worn for years was gone. In its place was nothing, just emptiness waiting to be filled with judgment. Has the jury reached a verdict in the matter of the state of Connecticut versus Jenna Marie Dawson? We have, Your Honor. The charges against Jenna were different but no less damning. Conspiracy to commit murder. Accessory to murder. Financial fraud. Obstruction of justice. The foreperson read each verdict with the same steady voice. Conspiracy to commit murder in the death of Helen Whitmore. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Accessory to murder, guilty. Financial fraud, guilty. Obstruction of justice, guilty. I watched my sister's face as each verdict fell. She did not flinch, did not cry, did not react at all. It was as if she had already gone somewhere else, somewhere no one could reach her, somewhere beyond guilt or innocence or consequences. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Reporters rushed to file their stories. Somewhere behind me, someone was crying. I sat frozen, unable to move, unable to feel. I should have felt triumphant. Justice had been served. Helen had been avenged. Instead, I felt hollow. My sister was going to prison. My grandmother was still dead. There were no winners here, only survivors. 1 week later, we returned to the courthouse for sentencing. The atmosphere was different this time, quieter. The drama was over. Only the cold mathematics of justice remained. Judge Harrison addressed Tyler first. Mr. Brennan, you have been found guilty of murder in the first degree, attempted murder, conspiracy, fraud, and numerous other charges. Your crimes were calculated, cold-blooded, and motivated by pure greed. You targeted a vulnerable elderly woman, corrupted a medical professional, and planned to murder multiple members of the same family for financial gain. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the courtroom. I hereby sentence you to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Tyler's lawyer requested permission to speak. Denied. Tyler himself stood, trying to address the court. Your Honor, I want it on record that Jenna Dawson was the driving force behind. "Sit down, Mr. Brennan." Judge Harrison's voice cut through his protest like a blade. "Your attempts to deflect blame have been noted and rejected by this court." Tyler sat. For the first time since I had known him, he looked genuinely afraid. Life without parole. He would die in prison. The charming, calculating predator who had destroyed my family would never see freedom again. I watched them lead him away in chains and felt nothing but relief. Then it was Jenna's turn. My sister stood beside her public defender, small and pale in her prison uniform. Judge Harrison's voice was different now. Not softer, but more complex, layered with something that might have been sorrow. "Ms. Dawson, your case is more complicated. You were not the primary architect of these crimes. However, you were not a passive bystander either. You actively participated in the murder of your grandmother, a woman who loved you, who raised you, who trusted you until the very end." Jenna's mask cracked. A single tear rolled down her cheek. "The court recognizes that you were influenced by Tyler Brennan, but influence is not control. You had choices. You made the wrong ones. The sentence was 20 years, with possibility of parole after 15. I did the math again. Jenna was 32. She would be 47 at the earliest when she walked free. If she walked free. If the parole board believed she had been rehabilitated. If she survived 15 years in prison. Before being led away, Jenna was allowed to make a statement. She stood slowly, her chains rattling in the silent courtroom, and faced the gallery. "I want to say something to my sister." Judge Harrison nodded permission. Jenna turned to look at me directly for the first time since the trial began. "I know you hate me. You should. What I did was unforgivable." She paused, struggling for words that could never be adequate. "When we were kids, I used to wish I was you. You were so easy. Everything came easy to you. School, friends, grandma's love. I had to fight for every scrap of attention, and you just had it all." I felt tears burning my eyes but refused to let them fall. I told myself the money would make it even. That once I had what you had, I would finally feel like enough. But it did not work. Nothing Tyler promised came true. And now I have lost everything, including you. Her voice hardened slightly. "I am not asking for forgiveness. I know I do not deserve it. But I want you to know that I loved Grandma. In my own broken way, I loved her. And I will spend the rest of my life regretting that I let that love get poisoned by jealousy." She stopped, looked down at her shackled hands. "That is all. I am done." Guards moved to escort her out. At the door, she stopped and looked back one final time. "Goodbye, Aaron." Then she was gone. 2 days later, there was a separate hearing for Dr. Nathan Mercer. He had pleaded guilty months ago in exchange for his testimony against Tyler. But guilty pleas still required sentencing. Dr. Mercer stood before Judge Harrison looking nothing like the confident physician he had once been. Gray, diminished, beaten. His lawyer argued for leniency, cooperation with authorities, no prior criminal record, genuine remorse. The prosecution argued for maximum punishment. He had violated his sacred oath. He had killed a patient for money. He had betrayed everything the medical profession was supposed to represent. Judge Harrison's verdict was 12 years in federal prison and permanent revocation of his medical license. Before being led away, Mercer turned to address me directly. "I became a doctor to save lives. I do not know when that changed. I do not know when money became more important than the oath I swore." His voice cracked. "I am sorry. I know that means nothing. But I am sorry. I said nothing. I did not owe him absolution." After the hearing, Detective Chen briefed us on the ongoing investigation. Tyler's uncle, the city councilman who had protected him for years, had resigned under a cloud of corruption allegations. The police captain who had suppressed the original investigation into Helen's death had been suspended pending internal review. The bank employees who had leaked confidential trust information were facing charges of their own. The entire network Tyler had built was collapsing, one domino at a time. Your grandmother would be proud, Chen said quietly. My grandmother would have preferred to be alive. Chen nodded, but since that was not possible, this is the next best thing. 1 week after sentencing, Marcus and I were summoned to Ashford Town Hall. We were met by the mayor, the new police chief, and a representative from the state medical examiner's office. They led us to a small conference room where documents were spread across a table. The medical examiner presented the official form. Helen Margaret Whitmore. Death certificate amended. Original cause of death. Cerebrovascular accident. Amended cause of death. Homicide by poisoning via medication tampering. Manner of death, homicide. The word homicide was printed in stark black ink. Official, permanent, true. The mayor spoke next. On behalf of the town of Ashford, I want to extend our deepest apologies to the Whitmore family. Helen Whitmore was a pillar of this community for over 50 years. She served on our town council. She contributed to countless charities. She touched hundreds of lives. She deserved better from us. She deserved justice when she was alive. We failed her then. We will not fail her memory now. A formal apology. A public acknowledgement. It did not bring Helen back. Nothing could. But it mattered. Somehow it mattered. That afternoon, Marcus and I drove to the cemetery. Helen's headstone stood gray and solid against the winter sky. Simple and elegant, just like she had been. I knelt beside it and placed fresh flowers in the built-in vase. Wild flowers, the kind Jenna used to pick when we were children. Before everything went wrong. We did it, Grandma. I whispered the words against the cold stone. They are going to prison. All of them. Your name is cleared. Everyone knows the truth. I touched the smooth granite, tracing the letters of her name with my fingertips. I wish you were here. I wish I could have saved you instead of avenging you. Marcus stood behind me, his hand warm on my shoulder. She knows, he said quietly. Wherever she is, she knows. I stood and looked at my grandmother's grave, at the peaceful rows of headstones stretching across the winter landscape, at the bare trees waiting for spring. I want to do something, I said. Marcus looked at me. What kind of something? Grandma left me almost $3 million. Money I never asked for, never expected, money that people killed for. I turned to face my husband. I do not want it sitting in a bank account. I do not want it buying things I do not need. I want it to mean something. I want Helen's death to mean something beyond revenge. What are you thinking? A foundation. Something that helps other families. Other elderly people being targeted and manipulated and abused. Something that gives them what Helen did not have. Someone in their corner before it is too late. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. Helen would love that. Then let us do it. Let us turn all this pain into something that matters. We walked out of that cemetery hand in hand, leaving the graves and the grief behind us but carrying something else forward. A purpose. Tyler Brennan and my sister had tried to destroy our family for money. They had failed. And now that same money would become a shield for every vulnerable person we could reach. Helen's legacy would not be her murder. It would be the lives saved in her name. That was the real justice. Not watching them go to prison, but making sure their cruelty created something beautiful they could never have imagined. 1 year to the day after Tyler Brennan was sentenced to life in prison, I stood in front of a building that used to be an abandoned textile mill and watched my grandmother's name go up in lights, the Helen Whitmore Foundation. The words glowed warm and golden against the red brick facade. Below them, a smaller sign read, "Protecting our elders, preserving their dignity." A crowd had gathered on the sidewalk, volunteers and donors and local officials and families we had already helped, all watching as workers finished installing the illuminated letters. Marcus stood beside me, his hand warm in mine. 1 year ago, I was a widow, pretending to grieve while hunting my sister. Now I was the founder of an organization that had already changed lives. The money that people had killed for had become a shield for the vulnerable. The irony was not lost on me. Neither was the justice. Edward Collins approached with a folder tucked under his arm. He looked different than he had a year ago. Less tired, more purposeful. "The year-end numbers are in," he said quietly. I opened the folder and scanned the pages inside. 53 families assisted in our first year of operation. Over $800,000 in stolen assets recovered. 14 criminal prosecutions initiated. 6 financial predators currently behind bars. "Helen would be proud," Edward said. "Helen would say we are just getting started." The grand opening ceremony began an hour later. I stood at a podium in front of the renovated building, looking out at the gathered crowd, and felt something I had not felt in a very long time. Hope. I did not talk about statistics. I talked about faces. Maria Gonzalez was 74 years old when her grandson started draining her retirement account. 5,000 here, 10,000 there. By the time she noticed, over $60,000 was gone. Her grandson told her she was confused, told her she had approved the withdrawals, made her doubt her own memory. The foundation intervened. We recovered her money. We helped her establish legal protections that would prevent anyone from accessing her accounts without proper oversight. Maria was in the audience today, sitting in the front row, crying happy tears. "She reminds me of my grandmother," I said, "not because they look alike, but because they both deserved someone to fight for them." I told other stories too. Harold Chen, 81, whose financial advisor turned out to be a con artist. We exposed the fraud, recovered his savings, and the advisor was now serving 5 years in federal prison. The Patterson family, whose father's new wife had been systematically isolating him from his children. Our mediators helped reunite the family before it was too late. Each story was Helen's story repeated, but with a different ending. "Every person in this room has been touched by betrayal," I said. "By people who should have protected them, but chose to exploit them instead. I know that pain personally. I lived it. I almost died from it." I paused, letting the weight of those words settle. But I also learned something. Pain can become purpose. Grief can become action. And justice, real justice, is not just about punishing the guilty. It is about protecting the innocent. After my speech, I mingled with the crowd. The team that had made this possible surrounded me, and I felt grateful for every single one of them. Detective Laura Chen had retired from Hartford Police Department 6 months ago. She was now our Director of Investigations, using 30 years of law enforcement experience to help families navigate the legal system. "I spent my career watching cases like Helen's get swept under the rug," Chen told a group of donors. "Now I actually get to do something about them." Claire Mitchell was there too. My former colleague from Lincoln Elementary had quit teaching to become the foundation's volunteer coordinator. She had recruited over 200 volunteers in the past year, many of them retired teachers and nurses and social workers who wanted to make a difference. "I always wanted to do more than grade papers," Claire said. "When I saw what Tyler was doing to Aaron, I realized there are monsters everywhere. I wanted to help fight them." Edward Collins remained our board chair, his connection to Helen giving the organization both credibility and soul. "I made a promise to Helen 40 years ago," he told the crowd. "I told her I would always be there for her family. This is me keeping that promise." One person was notably missing from the celebration. Ruth Gonzalez had passed away peacefully in her sleep 3 months ago. She was 81 years old, and she had lived just long enough to see the foundation launch. Just long enough to know that her testimony had mattered, that the evidence she had protected for so long had helped bring murderers to justice. A photograph of Ruth stood on the memorial table beside Helen's portrait. 2 women who had never asked for courage but had found it when it mattered most. "She died knowing the truth came out," Marcus said quietly. "That is more than most people get." The celebration continued into the evening. There was food and music and laughter, sounds that had seemed impossible a year ago. And then came a special announcement that Marcus had been keeping secret. He took the microphone with obvious reluctance. Public speaking had never been his strength, but the words he spoke were worth the discomfort. "I wrote a book," he said simply. "It is called Dead Man's Justice: How I Faked My Death to Catch My Wife's Killers." The crowd murmured with interest. Several reporters in attendance started taking notes. Publishers Weekly already reviewed it, Marcus continued. They called it a gripping true crime memoir. All proceeds go directly to the foundation. He paused, looking out at the gathered faces. "I am not a hero. I am just a man who got lucky and got angry in the right order." Laughter rippled through the crowd. When I discovered what Tyler and Jenna were doing, I had a choice: run and hide, go to police who might be corrupt, or fight back in a way they would never expect. He looked at me. I chose to fight. But I could not have done any of it without the bravest woman I have ever known. My wife, who walked into that lion's den every day for 3 weeks, smiled at the people who wanted her dead and brought them down from the inside. Applause filled the room. I wiped tears from my eyes. "This book is not about me," Marcus said. "It is about everyone who has ever felt powerless against people who abuse trust. It is a manual for fighting back. And it is a love letter to the woman who taught me that courage is not the absence of fear. It is the refusal to let fear win." The book was dedicated to 3 people. For Helen Whitmore, who deserved better. For Ruth Gonzalez, who kept the faith. And for Aaron, who proved that love is the only revenge that matters. Later that evening, after the guests had gone and the caterers had packed up, Marcus and I sat alone in the empty foundation hall. The building was quiet now, but I could still feel the energy of what had happened here, the hope, the healing, the promise of more to come. My phone buzzed with a news alert I had set up months ago. Jenna Dawson denied first parole hearing. I read the article in silence. Despite model behavior, the parole board had ruled her crimes too severe for early release. She would remain incarcerated for at least another 3 years before her next hearing. "How do you feel?" Marcus asked. I considered the question. I thought I would feel satisfied, but mostly I just feel tired. "Do you ever think about visiting her again?" I shook my head. I said goodbye. I meant it. She is not my sister anymore. She is just someone I used to know. There was something else on my phone. An email forwarded from the prison. Jenna had been writing to me every month since her incarceration, letters I had never opened. "She keeps trying," Marcus observed. "She keeps trying to manipulate. It is all she knows how to do." I deleted the email without reading it, just like all the others. Some doors, once closed, should stay closed. There was news about Tyler, too. He had been attacked by another inmate 2 months ago, survived but spent weeks in the prison hospital. Apparently, criminals do not appreciate men who hurt old ladies and women. I felt nothing when I read this. No satisfaction, no pity, just nothing. "Karma," Marcus said. "Justice. Karma is for the universe. Justice is what we build ourselves." The next morning I drove to the cemetery alone. It was something I did every month now, a ritual that had become as natural as breathing. Helen's headstone looked different today. The inscription had been updated. "Beloved grandmother, fierce protector, her legacy lives on." Fresh flowers already filled the built-in vase. Someone else had been here. One of Helen's old friends, probably. She had touched so many lives. I sat on the small bench beside her grave and talked to her the way I always did. "The foundation helped its 50th family last week, Grandma. A 90-year-old woman whose son was stealing her Social Security checks. We caught him. She is safe now." I pulled my coat tighter against the February cold. "I think about you every day. About what you would say if you could see what we have built. I hope you would be proud. I hope you would think it was worth it." A cardinal landed on Helen's headstone. Her favorite bird. She used to say cardinals were visitors from heaven, loved ones checking in to let us know they were okay. I smiled through my tears. I will take that as a yes. For the first time in 2 years, I felt something close to peace. Not happiness exactly. Happiness felt too simple for everything I had experienced. But peace, acceptance, the knowledge that I had done everything I could. I stood and brushed snow from my coat. Marcus was waiting at the cemetery gate, patient as always. I walked toward him, toward the future we were building together. We had moved into Helen's old house on Maple Street, reclaimed it, filled it with light and love and the sounds of a life being rebuilt. I taught part-time now, splitting my days between the classroom and the foundation. Marcus had finished his book and was already working on a second, a guide for families to recognize the signs of elder abuse before it was too late. We were talking about children. Maybe, someday, when the time was right. For now, we had each other, and that was enough. "Thank you," I whispered as I reached the cemetery gate, to Helen, to Ruth, to everyone who had helped us survive. Then I turned forward, toward the rest of my life. If you have stayed with me until now, you have not just heard a story. You have witnessed what happens when evil wears a familiar face and love becomes the only weapon that matters. My name is Erin McCall. I am 37 years old now, and I have learned that God walks beside us through valleys we never imagined we would survive. When I discovered my husband was alive, I thanked God. When my sister was led away in handcuffs, I asked God for strength. And when the foundation opened its doors, I knew His mercy was real, even when His timing tested my faith. Looking back at this family story, I see my mistakes clearly. I ignored the warning signs. I trusted when I should have questioned. I assumed that blood meant loyalty. Do not be like me. Do not wait for tragedy to force your eyes open. If someone you love seems afraid, listen. If financial records do not add up, investigate. If your gut tells you something is wrong, believe it. People ask me if what I did was revenge. Maybe it was. But here is the truth I have learned. Real revenge is not about destroying your enemies. It is about building something they could never imagine. Something beautiful from something broken. The Helen Whitmore Foundation exists because I refuse to let my grandmother's death be meaningless. We have helped over 50 families, recovered hundreds of thousands of dollars, and put predators behind bars. But every victory reminds me that we cannot bring back the dead. We can only honor them by protecting the living. Your voice matters. If this story resonated with you, if you have faced betrayal or manipulation or injustice in your own family, I want to hear from you. Share your experience in the comments below. Your story might be the lifeline someone else desperately needs. You are not alone. There are thousands of us who understand exactly what you are going through. If this story moved you, please share it with friends and family who need to hear it. Someone you know might be trapped in a situation like mine was. Your share could be the first step toward their freedom. And if you have not already, please subscribe to this channel. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a story. There are more truths to uncover, more proof that ordinary people can overcome extraordinary evil, more reminders that you are stronger than you know. Thank you for walking this difficult journey with me. Your time, your attention, your willingness to listen. It honors Helen's memory more than you know. A final word of transparency. The stories on this channel blend real experiences with fictionalized elements designed for educational impact. If dramatized content is not your preference, I respect that completely. Feel free to explore other videos that might suit you better. But if you choose to stay, know that every story here carries a lesson worth learning and a truth worth remembering. May God bless you and keep you. May He give you the courage to face the darkness in your own life, and may He grant you the peace that comes from knowing you are never fighting alone. I walked through the front door of our home, Helen's home, and let the warmth wrap around me like an embrace. On the mantel, her photograph smiled down at me. Not the formal portrait from the funeral, but a candid shot from one of our summer visits. Helen laughing at something off camera, alive with joy. I touched the frame gently and whispered what I whisper every night before bed. "We did it, Grandma. We really did it." And in the silence that followed, I could have sworn I heard her answer. No, child, we are just getting started. This story is fictionalized for dramatic effect.